Millimeter, it be accurately measured. It's measured flat, direction up and down. Flat level we at, flight over ground. Descending from that breeze, heading in degrees. Horizontal, flat, ESC. Now you know it's flat, below ground. Measured flat.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. That runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a copy on Patreon. So a massive shout of thanks and appreciation to Pablo de la Cruz, level. What's wrong with my mic? Is it working? It's just interacting with the wind. Vitali Z, Colton James, Survive the Spin, Thomas Van der Zander, Measured Flat, Tiers Morgan, Mitch Kennedy, Rod, The Name's Burley, J Miles 24, Unamento, Iron 26, Retro Bill, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Bob Barker, I should say, Mobile Mac 777, Rob W, Del West Watson, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Texas Mike, Chow Yun Cat, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Links to Patreon are below this video. With that, I'm going to hand across to whoever is in Discord and Google, so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show. Okie dokie, there's absolutely nobody here. Right, let's do a bit of sound checking then of this Owen Benjamin video.
I sometimes miss having an agent. I'm like, oh yeah, talk to the Jewish guy about the money. I don't care about that. He handles everything. I don't think about that. I don't need to fix my car. I don't need to.
That looked like it was okay. Nobody in the other panels to ask if they could hear it. Oh well. Hello.
Hey.
How's it going?
You just start.
Yeah, I've just literally
Good.
just sat down and just finished my intro. It actually helped me out because I tested to see if this worked, but then didn't know if it worked in the Hangout. Can you hear this?
Grow my food. I don't need to raise my kids.
Hear that?
Who was that?
Owen Benjamin. I take that as a yes. You could hear it though. Good.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. Just you're doing an Owen Benjamin video today.
Yeah, Surf Daddy stuck it in the Master B stream, and I looked at it and I quite like, but I generally find pleasure in watching Owen Benjamin as a general rule. I can't think of a time that I've watched him and gone, oh wow, I really regret spending that 20 minutes watching this. Do you know what I mean? I don't think I've ever had that feeling about him. So when I saw him in the feed, I was like, yeah, I'll cover that today. I don't even know what it's about, to be honest. I didn't read. Did I read what Surf Daddy said? I think I transposed it into a text reader after I'd been awake for about 10 minutes and then had it played to me. So whether or not that means I've taken it or not is a different story. But I had the voice to speech thingy in the iPad. I don't know what you call those things. Text speech generator. Read out what Surf Daddy said about it. Something what stuck in my mind was if how would this conversation have gone if Owen Benjamin knew Earth was measured flat? So I was like, okay, because he's obviously talking about flat Earth to an extent that's useful, or he wouldn't have posted it with timestamps. But he's given me 3 clips with timestamps, so why not?
Well, I know Owen Benjamin is the type that he may respond to you, so we should probably go a little easy on him. Nah, never mind.
I don't go easy or hard on anybody. When people perceive that to be the case, normally I'm reflecting their own behaviour. which I've always found really amusing. I mean, in this particular walk of life that's flat earthing, there's few things in the actual debate that you can get a laugh out of. It's all super serious fart sniffers, isn't it? Maths and geometry and science. It's all a bit. I don't know. It's hard to have a laugh when those are your ingredients. It's not exactly coming up with punchlines and lead lines, is it? You know what I mean? So when it comes to me being, let's call it, hard on somebody, normally what's happened is they've behaved like a prick, or they're associated with people who behave like pricks, and I'll just mirror their own behaviour back at them, and then immediately it's like, look how horrible he is. And that just, like I say, just makes me laugh.
Right. Oh, yeah, I was just fucking around. But for this to be the most boring topic in the world, it's interesting. It has the best punchline when you step back away from it.
The punchline being it was always flat anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what you calculate, or it just doesn't matter. It's just flat.
Yeah, it's weird how those things work out. So when I look at the debate, I think, well, there's plenty of things that we criticise from what's perceived to be our own side that I now look at and go, well, but for your existence, there wouldn't be this counterpart arguing about how spherical the world is, bracing against you. And every minute or two, there's a reference to a flat plane that's not actually being highlighted. That for us now, you can look back and every time you hear those things, when someone talks about a distance or a height or whatever, you kind of roll your eyes now. And like you say, it's because you're hearing the punchline being continually delivered, just never recognised as a punchline. Hey, Len.
Yeah. Well, I think it was always there. Like I always knew it. I think everybody does. It's like, what was you saying last week? Goes without saying.
Yeah. Somebody said something interesting. I can't remember which video it is on, but in the comments of one of the videos, recent videos, they said the opposite, or they said it from the perspective of our so-called opponents, John. The commenter said, deep down, they've always been scared of their own measurements. I read that and I thought, yeah, there's a certain degree of hesitancy that we can pull out of our so-called opponents currently that demonstrates that. So when they stutter around saying sea level or distance or whatever it is we're currently holding them to task on being a flat earth measurement, they stutter around it quite overtly. But that hesitancy might not necessarily have been so much at the forefront 5 years ago, but it's still going to be there underlying these things. The fact that some opponent hasn't made you literally stutter about it, doesn't mean that it's not underlying your own cognition or was underlying those people's cognition when they said things like sea level.
Yeah, the localized plane of heliocentrism is foundational to all claims. And that is, when they say localized plane, they're talking about what can be measured.
Yeah. There isn't anything other than a local measurement. We only measure Earth locally. Because that's all you can. You can't measure non-locally, can you? I'm just going to measure over there. Where? Where I'm not. Non-locally.
Right. You have to be able to reference it, right? Well, all reference are localized to where you are referencing them from. It's like I don't know. It's kind of blatant, but they think because they say it, it doesn't matter. a localized plane and then just move on to talk about Earth being a sphere after you say localized plane?
Yeah, maybe at one time they were able to get away with that, but not anymore.
We're doing Owen Benjamin today, Neil.
What does that even mean, locally flat?
Just in your neighborhood.
No, it means what's referenceable. It's local to you, that which is referenceable.
Okay, I could stand where I'm at. Uh, uh, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, local in this context is everything that can be measured from your position.
Do you have a yellow pages? Everybody listed in your yellow pages lives locally on the same flat bit that you do.
Well, now the heliocentrist is supposed to say that it is a diverging zenith localized plane, and that yeah, it's good, really good punchline to that one.
So, what do you consider those J Tolan infrared long distance?
Just before you move on. Local. The word local refers to a specific place or restricted area. It comes from the late Latin word localis, meaning belonging to a place. The Latin root of locus, meaning a place. It was meant of or belonging to a particular place in English since the 15th century.
So if you belong to England, that's local. Or if you belong to the United States, that's local.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Now it's context to how you're using it. Localized plane, you're talking about measurement. It'd be that which can be measured from your position.
Yeah, from your locality. Local as in your location.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm standing in a position. What do you mean, as far as I can measure? Not as far as I can see.
Yes.
Stepped away and
Well,
I've
then
got to
that's
come back.
great.
No. You said it already. Not as far as you can measure. That's not strictly accurate either. My mic keep cutting out. Hold on a second. I'm just going to turn my mic on and off again. Check 1, 2. I think my desk might be overheating. Anyway, you got it right the first time when you said how far you can reference. So if you've got a massive project that's over several miles, like you're building an enormous, I don't know, like the Hadron Collider or something enormous, how far you can measure is as far as one guy can deal with. But the entire site has an overarching levelness to it that will be a common reference for everybody who's building on that particular part of the world, that terrain. So it's your statement initially was the more accurate one. How far can you reference? Well, in this particular building site, we can reference all the way up to X point in a geographical coordinate structure. Now, it's not that you've measured the coordinate either, it's just you know where the edge of your territory that you've got a common reference to be level with, all mapped out before you got there and started laying bricks down.
Now, if it's outside of your observation area, it wouldn't you wouldn't use reference. It would be sourced.
It wouldn't be local anymore.
Right. It would be sourced. It's referenced and sourced flat.
There's even more nuance to it.
A group of, oh, sorry.
No, I'm just agreeing. I'm saying it's even more nuanced. But it's all specific to what you can physically achieve where you are, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, like if you have the measurement of an elevation angle, right, and it's 2,300 miles away to the GP, you can source that as 2,300 miles flat.
That sounds beautiful. What happened to the 8 inches per mile squared?
A level deviating from level at the rate of level.
I'll make up my mind if I like my side-by-side when I'm doing these video responses. I've set up a new camera angle. I'm not sure if I should have put the person I'm responding to below me, above me. At the moment, they're next to me. Anyway, it looks alright, works.
Put them below you. You don't want to put them beside you because it seems like you're having a debate with them. And you don't want to put them above you because it lends authority.
So I need to be above them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
There seems to be an almost unspoken standardization that if you're responding, you need to be in the bottom left-hand corner of the video that you're responding to. That's sort of the unwritten rule. But then you get shorts videos where, because it's vertical, hit the both people on, you need them, side by side vertically. You know what I mean? One on top of the other. So that you fit on a phone screen with both your faces evenly proportioned in the center of the frame. So that's kind of changed the rules of where to be when you're reacting to somebody. Above, next to, bottom left-hand corner, side by side. And it's getting whatever you'll end up with looking nice in one but not the other. Or requiring a heavy degree of editing for one and not the other. We'll see, I'll keep fiddling.
Yeah, that's what the pre-show is here for, fiddling. How you been, Neil?
I see too far. But I've been hearing all weekend. Made my stomach sick.
See too far for what?
Freak knows. That's still till this day. That's equals proof. I see too far.
Yeah, but you see too far for what?
For it to be a ball.
Well, any distance that you would try to give far or too far would have to be linear. I don't know how you're going to work that on a sphere.
Yeah.
That's right.
Everything's all convoluted.
Well done. I mean, they've done a really good job of setting the argument, framing the argument. You know what I mean? Like, arguing about measurements of Earth curve presupposes that there are measurements of Earth curve to argue about, you know?
Yeah, it gets a bit deeper, doesn't it? It's whether or not the Earth is a sphere that's the predominant controlled opposition version of what we call the argument. So, is it a sphere? Isn't it a sphere?
It's got to be a sphere because Norway, you know, they were playing at a certain time.
What
But
time?
in Norway, it was very late at night, but still as bright as day because Earth is a globe.
That's a convention that's been created. If you say at the end of that, because Earth's a globe, then you're deriving the convention for time from a system that's extracted after the averaging of the movement of the sun to give us a time construct. The heliocentrism aspect, the after the fact heliocentric time aspect, is derived from flat Earth measurements also. So if you're going to say, well, it's because we have heliocentric motion that we have the movement of the sun, so we can average that movement of the sun. It's like you don't need the backstory to average the movement of the sun and create the time convention. Let's just get that out of the way. The one is not dependent on the other. But the suggestion that it is means that you've got a suggestion of a heliocentric system, and that is derived from flat Earth prerequisites. So the assertion, I'm going to start doing this. If somebody starts asking me what's your model, I'm going to go, my heliocentric model is made with flat Earth measurements. If I was to put my pin on a model, so previously I got scorned for this one. I'm like, well, in some ways admire the heliocentric model. Cool, right? How cleverly they've thought outside of the box to try and explain the movement of these lights. Well, while I understand that that isn't reifiable into the world I'm standing on, I can say my flat Earth model is the equatorial plane inside the glorified protractor we call a globe Earth, moving around the sun with an elliptical orbital motion derived from Kepler, Copernicus and Huygens. That flat Earth model, that's the one I use to predict eclipses. Heliocentric motion is my flat Earth model. The amount of people have been telling me that my claims are their claims after they are demonstrated to be flat Earth claims by way of their predisposition to the measurements they are required to make their model. Well, their disposition being projected onto me has happened so many times. I'm going to start. I did it the other day. I went, okay, I think it was to Rob Noxious. I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with you because you can't tolerate me parroting back your own heliocentrism in requirement of a globe Earth radial value that's measured flat. You won't listen to me steelman your own position back to you because it's just too painful. Well, if I say, okay, I'm going to start repositioning the heliocentric model, not as my own, but as what I will appeal to should somebody ask me where my flat Earth model is. What's my flat Earth model? Globe, if you want to put it in those cruder terms. The globe's my flat Earth model. Ha ha ha, the globe's not a globe, a flat Earth. Yeah, it is. It's based on an equatorial plane derived from flat Earth measurements, with a glorified protractor with a pretty map painted on it. It is a flat Earth model. Now, to suggest that we're standing on the map that's painted on the protractor that we derive from the equatorial plane that is flat and measured as such is your reification after the fact and not mine. The fact that I understand heliocentrism to the point where I can describe it from an equatorial plane just means that I understand it and its measurements. The fact that there's people around me that are more ignorant of their own belief in the reification after the fact when it comes to these measurements of a flat Earth isn't my problem. Now, in terms of the understanding that they thought they had of being on a globe, it is in reality a understanding of being on a flat plane. And that's what I'm going to lean into. What's your model? I'm going to go with the Copernicus heliocentric model. Well, that's
but that,
go on.
That can't happen. See, you missed it, Nathan. That whole Norway being daytime when it's freaking supposed to be nighttime can't happen on a flat plane. So,
Well, no. I did that with Ken Hovind, Nathan, or because he said that he'll only debate flat earther who has a model. So I claimed the celestial sphere, and he wouldn't talk to me anymore.
Yeah. So, what a shocker! You've already got there before me, is what you're saying. How brilliant! You got there 2 weeks ago, goddamn you.
I think Len wants to say something.
Dead.
Nathan, have you ever done a show going through a bunch of the globe projections, like the two cone ones, one that's around the supposed sphere, one that goes through the sphere, and detailed where they need sea level and whatnot? Have you ever done a show like that?
Yeah, it's what we originally did with Martin. I say we. I mean, before it was really a show, it was just me and a group of people like Patricia Steer and Martin and Mark Sargent and Dave Weiss. And, you know, Martin's place in that was to show us and demonstrate a lot of these global projections. You know, the original investigation into the azimuthal equidistant North Pole centric globe projection is as a result of Mark Sargent looking into it. Now, I admit now that seems like a planted version of the it's a globe projection argument, so we can argue about whether or not it's a globe. But ultimately speaking, yeah, we looked at all sorts of different projections, to the point where we had one guy on that was describing how the mathematics of projection itself functions in terms of how you could project it not only from any position on Earth, but into any shape. You know, as long as you've got some establishing measurements. It's just, even then, nobody highlighted on the fact that you need to establish the measurements from a flat plane. It's only 10 years later that you start going, hang on a second, what do we need to do? What was the starting point for these projections? Flat Earth measurements, isn't it? That's where we are all at now, isn't it? That's what we're contemplating.
So maybe it's worth revisiting, Nathan.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, this is an evergreen subject. You're always finding stuff out about the stuff that you've previously covered, and you can reassert it in light of the new information, with the old information being laughed at. In irony, you know, why didn't we spot it being the irony of it? Well, why didn't we notice this then? Because you're just not trained to. You're trained to say, well, this is why it's not a ball, when someone tells you it is.
We didn't notice the 8 inches per mile squared. Whoop-de-doo.
There's a lot of things we didn't notice, but that's life, isn't it? Maybe we would have just been censored a lot quicker if we'd have noticed it earlier. So there's been a decline in terms of the amount of publicity we're allowed to be subject to, and it almost correlates perfectly with the amount of information we gain. The closer we become to the position we're in now, the more the censorship increases. And it always seems to reach a point where you go, surely it couldn't get any worse than this, and then they turn up the wick one more notch. You know what I mean? But normally after a revelation.
We missed sea level. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah. We missed sea level, we missed distance, we missed altitude, we missed altitude angles, barometric pressure, linear scales on maps, elevation profiles. We missed it all. We used all of it, but we missed it all as being flat Earth in prerequisite.
That's correct.
Remember Darth saying that there's two baskets. You have a flat Earth basket and a globe Earth basket, and both can hold these evidences. And I was like, what? Oh my God, no.
That's right. A ball can't hold anything. It's ridiculous. Remember that? Well, it works on both models. What?
Yeah, whenever there was a flat Earth prerequisite, that had to be adhered to for both to be asserted. So let's measure an angle off a flat Earth to the sun, and then show how when we derive an R value and superimpose this flat angle measurement onto a sphere that couldn't retain it, it shows how Earth is spherical with a distant sun. Now let's try that on a flat Earth model. When we superimpose this flat Earth model we used in exactly the same format that didn't work on a globe, it works on a flat Earth just the same, so it works on both. Like, no, it's a flat Earth only prerequisite elevation angle measurement. It can only work from a flat Earth. The fact that you've converted it to sphericity doesn't mean it works on both. It means that it's a flat Earth angle. But we never noticed it. We just started our journey in juxtaposition with a false dichotomy of whether or not things worked on a sphere.
Yep. The wells, that was a good one too. Neil deGrasse Tyson. It could work on a local, close and local sun just as well, and everybody bought into that. See, even though the grass guy said it could work on a flat Earth.
Yeah, but he's saying he's changing it again from it is a flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle to if it's a close and local sun, it could work on a flat Earth. However, we know better that it's a distant sun that hasn't got a flat Earth angle acquisition from a curved surface available to it. But it's definitely a distant sun, and when we zoom out far enough, I mean, it might as well be a globe when you can't quite see that you'd be inside it to be in the motion that they're describing.
Absolutely.
Look,
They're doing the same
all
thing
you-
now with the distance. I mean, with the it being daylight in Norway. But this soccer thing, I've heard it going through
Right.
Discord and
What's time? Okay, we start appealing to whether or not day or night works on a freaking flat Earth. You're like, what are you talking about? What? Because you've got this idea that you're moving around the sun and the rotation of the Earth creates the day and night cycle. Okay, but what is the day and night cycle? When you look at the degrees of longitude wrapped around a ball, you're talking about you segmenting out the average at vernal equinox to wrap around a ball, but it's segmented angular measurements of the sun from a flat Earth. That's what it is.
Yeah, I was
Yep.
going to say that earlier. It's as a muscle movement. Is what you're describing.
Precisely. People don't seem to know what azimuthal means. It means horizontal. You're tracking the world with this system off a flat plane, and it's either in horizontal degrees of azimuth for the directionality of the sun, segmented and averaged, or it's vertical measurements of Polaris to create ever-increasing or ever-decreasing circles that then they get concertinaed out like they're a ball. Like, these are all flat prerequisites, and there isn't any exception. Any Earth measurement ever made is and can only be with respect to a plane. That's how every origin measurement of every suggested spherical proof has ever been made. Always. It always will be.
that's correct.
It kind of goes without saying, boys.
How are you?
Morning.
What's north? What's north?
Things are going south very rapidly. What's going south with you?
Everything's starting to look north.
We were discussing azimuthal directionality for time just before we started live. So occasionally we'll have people who presuppose spherical heliocentric orbital motion derived from the center point inside a ball that's been reified into existence after measuring Earth flat for the radial value to create that ball for a Copernican, Keplerian, Huygens-scaled, heliocentric, flat Earth-derived motion that suggests that Earth is turning to give us the day and night cycles. Meanwhile, the actual time cycle has been derived from azimuthal directionality of the sun averaged from a point that is only congruent with the mathematical interpretation of flat Earth angles to Polaris to create a time-based system that matches at one point in time during the span of another system we conventionally derive called a year. Now that is vernal equinox, where you inside a ball can track the azimuthal average of the sun to match with the Polaris average of a North Pole centric, also azimuthal directionality system that can be wrapped around you in the horizontal and vertical to form what I call the glorified protractor of the globe. Time itself as a convention has been derived from flat Earth acquisitions of measurements of the sun, and the system that we call the globe is dependent on that particular time-based system at vernal equinox and an average of the time structure to neatly separate it into what we call time zones, wrapped segmentally around a glorified protractor, North Pole centric. That's what the globe is. It's a reification of these systems we've derived with flat Earth measurements into what I will call the flat Earth equatorial plane-based system that moves around the sun, but in conceptual terms only. We don't actually move around the sun. This is an out-of-the-box mathematics invented by the Roman Catholic Church starting about 500 years ago to better explain the light movements in the sky that we experience with the tools available in terms of descriptions and mathematization. That's Directionality, that's azimuth, and horizontal verticality for angle acquisition from Polaris. That's what we have done, and that is what we have later put into heliocentric motion. That's to say that that system with you in the middle of a glorified protractor, you now, people watching on the globe side, think you are standing on rather than in, moving around the sun rather than it moving around us, as the systems of time have been derived from in the first place. That's what we were talking about in the pre-show. Or that's a summary of what we were talking about in the pre-show. We're actually talking about how stupid we feel, having reflected on a lot of these things that are now understood to be flat Earth by prerequisite and measurement 12 years into the discussion. When you look back on it, you go, well, we just didn't recognise how level sea level had to be. We didn't recognise how time was derived from a flat Earth prerequisite. We didn't recognise how directionality was derived from a flat Earth by prerequisite, or how distances were derived from flat Earth by prerequisite, or how parallel eye levels or flight levels or azimuthal descriptions were all derived from flat Earth measurements in the first place. That's what we were reflecting on. But that was a reasonable summary.
Here's the new thing. When we say, like, flight, right? Levels off 30,000 feet, we're getting mocked because the measurements are air pressure measurements.
And?
Yes, and the pressure is taken from
Sea level.
what reference?
Air pressures, in terms of its altitude ascribed to a flight, is with respect to sea level and surface level. Why? Well, because we need to know if we're higher than the mountain that's also been surveyed from sea level. You can say, well, what, barometric pressure isn't a dropping over the tape measure to that? No, it isn't, no. But with the barometric pressure that has also been measured from surface level / sea level, can tell the plane whether or not they're going to smash into the side of a mountain. The mountain having also been measured from sea level. You also need to know that you're not going to crash into other planes coming back at you in the opposite direction. Those are called flight levels, and they are parallel with one another. Parallel with what? Surface level. Measured from what? Sea level. These are axioms. Parallel.
Why would we be mocked for stating a fact?
Because it happens, because the same thing can be measured if you're flying around the globe.
You can't get a measurement from sea level.
Pressure.
You can't get a measurement from sea level around something. Sea levels are level. So no, you can't. When people say, I can still get this flat Earth measurement from a globe, I mean, you can feel free to believe that. If that's how you get to cope with your religious indoctrination being challenged by us with facts, then fine. I will allow people moving forward. I'm just going to stop arguing with them. At the point that I point out a contradiction in terms, I'll give you a couple of examples, one we've just had, but sea level curves, or sea level comports with the outside edge of a sphere Earth. Now, if that very blatant, I humbly declare, maybe it's not, maybe it's just me being super smart. I don't think I am, but I generally think that when I see a contradiction in terms, it's not because I'm super smart. I can just recognise a contradiction in terms. That, to me, doesn't seem like much of a task. Yeah? When someone says, can you pass me that square football? You mean the box? No, I mean it's defined in the dictionary as... No, I don't give a crap what you're saying. If you say something is spherical and it has angles and straight lines, it's not spherical. No matter you telling me that Merriam-Webster tells me that the box is a football will alter that it's a contradiction in terms. So if you say level, having no part higher or lower than another, curves, then to be curved or to be comporting to a curve requires you define how much a deviation from level you have to be curved. So to comport to something that is spherical is to also require you describe horizontality for the variation from the horizontality. So it's, as John would put it, levels deviating from levels at the rate of level. No, it's just a contradiction in terms. You can't describe a curve unless you have the axiom of horizontal to describe it from. You can't have a drop in the vertical, that's the curve, unless you've got the horizontal for it to drop from. Now, these are just facts that I see as glaringly obvious that are presented to us like it squares the circle. figuratively and literally. Well, there is no squaring circles. If something has no part higher or lower than another, it can't curve, because that means that it's having parts that are lower than other parts. When people see that and present it to me, from this point forth, it's just okay. If a contradiction in terms is what you need to maintain your cognitive dissonance, which is a glorified way of saying maintaining a comprehension level that allows you to sustain a contradiction in terms, that's all cognitive dissonance is. Having two incongruent positions held simultaneously, otherwise known as holding a contradiction in terms. That's all you're doing. But fine. Feel free to have the most glaring of these contradictions in terms. What was the one that you just said, Neil? As opposed to Merriam-Webster.
Yeah, that's the global mean sea level.
A global mean sea level. What does global mean? What, with lots of parts that you could describe as having an 8 inches per mile squared curve. So you need the mile in the horizontal and the 8 inches with a squared functionality in the vertical. So you need these two to be axiomatically perpendicular with respect to one another. One, the horizontal, has no parts higher or lower than the other to describe the parts, vertical, that are lower than other parts. Yeah? So these are principles. When you say global level, no, that's a complete contradiction in terms. But have it, if that's what you need. Right, so what you're saying is the base principle we use to measure, build, fly, navigate, sail isn't congruent with its axioms used to specifically deviate in the vertical with a curve. The thing itself that we're using to describe those deviations itself curves. I can't go anywhere with somebody with that level of cognition. If you want to adhere to this type of cognitive dissonance, I can't help you anymore. And I don't want to. All right, sea level curves, does it? On your way. That's what you need. A contradiction in terms is good enough for you. Fine. That's what you need, a contradiction in terms. Keep shouting it at me like it's going to make me believe the contradiction in terms. I can't. I'm not a genius, but I can recognise a contradiction in terms when I see one.
Well, the thing with that is, too, you have to specifically look up what level means on a globe to get the whole equidistant from the center of gravity or whatever they say it is.
For some reason, Neil likes to know the back process for how somebody gets to this. And Neil's established that if you look up level as a definition, it's pretty congruent with most definitions in most dictionaries, including Merriam-Webster. It says having no part higher or lower than another part, or words to that effect in simplistic terms. And it makes sense, right? That's what level means, right? A straight line. In this case, when we're measuring distances on a map, for example, no part is higher or lower than the other. It would be as the crow flies, a straight line, Euclidean, whatever you want to use as the terminology to describe having no part higher or lower than another. Well, that is obviously incongruent with the world if you think it's spherical. And I describe sea having no part higher or lower than another when you average it with mean sea level, so that you've got a reference for anything that deviates in the vertical from it, like a mountain or a hill or a valley. Those things are measured with the axiomatic principle of perpendicularity in tow when we describe the horizontality for the distance having no part higher or lower than another. So how do the powers that should not be, the dictionary writers, the AI generators, square this circle? Well, they give you a contradiction in terms. When you type in, this is where Neil comes into it, how does level work on a globe? And the AI spits out, Merriam-Webster says, level means having no part higher or lower than another, and having parts lower than other parts. That's what it says. You're like, okay. So you reject the first definition that matches all of the definitions of level because it's incongruent with your globe, and then go to the citation that says level, that's having no part higher or lower than another, can comport with having parts lower than other parts. If you type in that search request, if you type in Neil's search request, right? So Neil knows how they get there now. They type in, how do you have a level on a ball?
My favorite one is level is perpendicular to the vector of gravity.
So requiring a flat Earth also. So John's pointing out that if you describe perpendicularity with a ball, another axiomatic violation. Perpendicularity is at 90 degrees to a planar surface in this instance. So if you say, well, the ball is perpendicular to gravity, you're like, whoa, okay, so I've got a slight subtlety to the contradiction in terms here, because if you don't understand this axiom, you don't quite catch that you can't be perpendicular to a freaking ball. But he's also got this downward vector inserted into this violation of the axiom. Well, a downward vector implicitly describes being perpendicular to a plane. So if you miss the first one that's subtle, the downward bit gives it away, right, John?
Yeah, I love it. It's like they double stack it. Like, you know, they'll just keep using a plane as much as possible, and they'll get tired. They'll get overwhelmed or something and forget that it's a plane.
Exactly.
No, they'll take you to a garage and they'll talk about eclipses and how they could, mimic an eclipse in their garage. And you don't need any of the stuff Nathan talks about.
Is that when they try to line the angle of incident up between those spheres so that the angle...
This is specifically Rob Noxious relinquishing the false dichotomy of having a comparable heliocentric model literally built in his garage, right up until the point that I would point out how radius-based that would be if you're going to put it in false dichotomy and suggest that the alternative version of his model is a world-based model with an R derived from a flat Earth measurement, at which point this particular person relinquished their own necessity to suggest an R value's even required, a la Flat Earth Math Charles, who's actually a baller. If you don't know who this person is, he goes by a name Flat Earth Math, but he's actually a globe believer. And he did the same thing. I don't need R. What, because R's measured flat, you're going to relinquish your own base premise of the claim? In this case, for Obnoxious, relinquishing his suggestion that there's a comparison to a model built in his garage, when I point out how Earth must be flat for the R value. He just says, well, I don't need one.
So you
he was
don't need
refracted. He was
R
basic.
value?
Hold on. He was basically just ignoring everything Nathan said and just talking about his observation he had when he set it up in his garage. So he don't need any radius for that. I'm just doing it right there. I'm doing it.
But he did need the horizontal motion of these spheres to line up his angles with the light and the spheres to get a shadow, right?
Correct. And if he's going to describe that in the description of what is occurring in the model in the garage, he'd also need azimuthal directionality to describe it with.
Yeah.
Yep. He wasn't putting it together.
But at the point that they're having it pointed out that they require quite a few prerequisite flat Earth measurements, they want to relinquish the aspect of their model that relies on flat Earth measurements, in this case radial values. Happened a few years ago, like I say, with Charles. It's happening more and more now. But at the same time, people are demanding the same shit that they always demanded. Well, where's your model? Well, you don't want this one. It's like you've discarded it. I love that one. It's based on a flat Earth, so why not?
You know what you did with that? You stuck to the measurements when other people went to something like, well, you don't even know if it's a shadow. You understand?
Yeah, most people will go
path.
to the ambiguity of what we may not know about celestial observations in terms of how we interpret them. I went straight to, okay, so it's a flat Earth, you need to describe it in that way. I tried to, this is what I said in the pre-show when I was trying to describe me saying I'd stand shoulder to shoulder, that's a lot of S's, with this particular individual, because he wouldn't allow me to steelman his position. He would rumpus me agreeing with him, saying this is how your suggestion of your model works heliocentrically, and then I'd start stepping him through Kepler and Copernicus, etc., etc. You know the deal. And he wouldn't allow me to do that either. So he won't allow me to steelman his position because it's got flat Earth measurements as prerequisites. So he won't allow me to even agree with him. So I'm saying, well, look, I'm trying to stand shoulder to shoulder with you. I'm trying to say, yeah, I agree. Heliocentric motion all the way, with its flat plane derived radial value and equatorial plane. Happy days. But obviously, they now realise that their own models have got flat Earth prerequisites. So a bit like Simon down with you and your reference frames have been ruined. These people want to destroy their own globe Earth necessity for a radial value because it's also based on flat Earth measurements. So they throw the baby out with the bathwater. Well, I'm saying when I see that baby thrown out, I go, fine, I'll take ownership of this then. What's your model? The heliocentric model from a flat Earth derived with the radial value measured off a flat Earth with every single measurement and prerequisite of directionality. Flat Earth prerequisite, planar surface as we call the celestial plane, and the glorified protractor with its degrees of a flat Earth wrapped around us. I will start asserting their model as a flat Earth model, because it is. That's why they won't allow me to strawman their own position, because they know I'm taking them to the point where their own position depends on a flat Earth measurement. So I don't mind taking ownership of it if people are like, where's your model? This one, it's very out of the box. It's very crazy, wacky, stupid nonsense. But if you imagine we're on a plane with a map painted around us and the degrees we measure off a flat Earth creating this system called latitude, if they start rumpusing me, I'll go, do you not like this? I thought you were taught this in school too. Are you a Dumbo? And what are they going to do? Start bracing against their own model? Well, yes. At which point, in every single opportunity, oh, well, we can just disregard heliocentrism then. You don't believe we're in a ball. I'll just make sure to use the distinction moving forward that they probably won't catch. The in a ball versus on. You can't be on a ball in the heliocentric model. That's not possible. You can't derive the flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris when you're North Pole centric in that system. You can't describe the horizontal azimuth unless you're in the ball. You can't describe the time system for the latitude grid unless you're in the ball moving around the sun. But I would imagine that 99 times out of 100, people won't catch me saying in rather than on. So if they say, no, this isn't correct, you're like, well, how am I wrong? Well, on a ball, well, no, I am describing that, but inside a ball, as it actually functions, the inference being, you Dumbo, you don't know how your own model you thought you were on works. You're not on a ball moving around the sun. That's just a fact.
Yes, exactly. That's what I said on the show, too. None of your observations have been on a ball. They all come from inside a ball.
Right, we've got a video to cover that was given to me by Surf Daddy, and he's given me timestamps. So we're going to cover this. This is Owen Benjamin. Trump doesn't know, in quotes, the spell behind every big lie. Jack Neal podcast. That's JackNeel podcast. He's got a big old channel, 3.41 million subscribers. Woo-wee! This guy's popular. So I've shared his link, not that he needs my help, but everybody loves getting a bit of YouTube love. It doesn't matter if it's coming from me or anybody else. So please actually pop along to Jack Neal's podcast YouTube channel and let him know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me with a polite comment that doesn't immediately get removed by the YouTube algorithmic bots or indeed by the YouTube videographer or his team, probably, as he's got with that many subscribers themselves. So please let him know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. And by at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, I mean literally a little, whatever they call it, at symbol. Nathan Oakley 1980, all one word, sent me. Because then it highlights it in blue and you can actually click on it and come back to the channel. Like I say, unless you leave a passive-aggressive comment if you're a flatty, or I don't know if this is pro-flat Earth, I don't know yet, I haven't actually watched it. If your presentation that's about to come your way, future tense, is negative towards your globe belief, then don't be passive-aggressive from the globe side either. But just leave a nice comment that just lets them know the only reason you're there, or being made aware of his very popular channel already, is because of their the kindliness of nature of Nathan Oakley 1980, putting you in touch with him via a link that I'm sharing out now. I'm just waffling, so the people who are actually doing this have got enough time to go and do it, leave a comment and come back and hear me still doing the same call to action, in case you're wondering why I'm saying it repeatedly and stuttering over various ways to phrase the exact same thing, which is I've forgotten his name. Jack Neal, no, at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. And like I say, I do actually sincerely want you to do that. If you're watching live now, pop along to his channel, leave a quick comment, give him a like. I don't know whether he's pro or con flat earth / globe earth. I don't know what side it is. I haven't watched this particular video yet. Like I say, I've been given it by Surf Daddy, so please let him know. At Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. I think that's enough time for a few of you to actually have popped along and left him a comment. Should we carry on and actually do this? We all ready? Pipe up, feel free to open your mics in Discord and indeed in G+. If you do actually want to pop a comment verbally while we're doing this, feel free.
It's easy, right? Slavery is a choice. And so if you're dealing with...
Did he really just say slavery is a choice? I'm a trim.
I saw something
$20.
this weekend that said,
I don't think they've got a choice in
that
this.
said, white people can't decide what's racist. And that reminded me of that.
White people can't decide what's racist. You're never a true word spoken. It's like, if you made it a bit more overt, instead of it being people, if you made it about dogs, cats, gerbils, hamsters, tortoise, being sold in a pet store, right? It's like saying, well, that's the turtle's choice. You're like, what? No. Someone walks in, there's a transaction, money exchanged hands, and that turtle or tortoise now belongs to that person. What are you talking about? The turtle's got a choice. What are you babbling about? Sorry, Owen Benjamin. It's just, I mean, I haven't got the full context of what you said up until now. I mean, I did do a quick sound check for 5 seconds before this, but bloody hell, that doesn't need much context backing around it as far as I'm concerned. We've only been doing it for 5 seconds, and this is my reaction. No choice, you say?
I'm pretty sure that slavery is defined by its lack of choice.
Precisely.
You know?
Yes.
with a population where they say competition is the...
I don't hear anything in Discord.
You don't hear anything in Discord? As in it's not playing?
I don't. Whatever you just played, I didn't hear it.
Let's just check see if there's no sound coming through.
only sin, Rockefeller, it's a quote. You want people to choose that. Like, oh no, I'm nothing. I'm a speck of dust in an infinite vacuum spinning, and my ancestors are retarded monkeys.
So he's parroting heliocentric notions. I mean, this is where I left off when I last lost interest in Owen Benjamin. And I said in the pre-show, I like Owen Benjamin, before anybody gets on me that I'm mocking him immediately. Yes, I am, and yes, I will. I was told in the pre-show, look, this guy's all right, take it easy on him. I'm like, there is no taking it easy on anybody, right? I just react. So when someone says the slave is the one making the choice, you've got to laugh. I can't help it. It's literally on my side. But where he was at when he left off with flat earth was gaining an understanding of heliocentrism and the implications thereof. So when he says we're a speck of dust in an infinitely expanding soup of nothingness, that's the idea that if we were at the scale suggested by frickin' Huygens, then you'd be in an insignificant speck of dust. Like the way we've scaled the world, or the heliocentric universe in this particular example, is by Huygens taking that elliptical orbital motion that Kepler took from Copernicus and suggesting that based on Earth having a radial value that's been measured flat, we can superimpose that flat Earth measurement of a radial value onto Venus, so we can scale how far the sun is in that elliptical orbital motion given to him by Kepler, and therein scale everything else with that. So you need a flat Earth measurement of a radius value so that you can superimpose it onto Venus to scale the entire system, to give us the notion that we're in an ever-expanding soup of nothingness and therefore a insignificant speck of dust. But ultimately, this notion does require a flat Earth measurement for the invocation of the fantasy, which I understand Owen Benjamin braces against. But to brace against it is to also simultaneously brace against the flat Earth measurement that gets you there. Just saying.
When is this video, Nathan?
It's called Owen Benjamin, : quotation. Trump doesn't know, ! Quotation marks. The spell behind every big lie. Vertical line. Jack Neal podcast.
I'm saying, when was it? How long ago?
When?
Recent?
It was 3 days ago.
So you're telling me this is what he's saying 3 days ago, because you could just go to 2016, go back in time 10 years, and this is what you're going to be hearing.
Yeah, I remember saying it personally. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just towing the line of what I call the controlled opposition narrative version of flat Earth, right? We're not expanding into an ever-expanding soup of nothingness, and we're not an insignificant speck of dust. That's old school, right? Now I say, to be in this case, speck of dust in an infinitely expanding soup of nothing, you need flat Earth measurements to scale, like Huygens did, the Copernican orbital motion system based inside a ball on the equatorial plane, and that equatorial plane is derived by flat Earth measurements of its radial value. So this fantasy to say that we're not part of is no different, albeit a slightly more comprehensive or a slightly more advanced, let's just say, understanding of heliocentrism. It's no different to anything I've described over the last 6 months, where I say we have a fart-sniffing, dweeb, adenoidal cuck for the globe who says that Earth is spherical, and we have somebody here that's societally placed lower than him, that's Owen Benjamin, saying he's a flat earther, or whatever he titles himself, saying Earth's not a globe because we're not moving around the sun and not in an expanding soup of nothingness and not a speck of dust. You're like, well, with your conspiracies, societally, you're just seen as slightly lower than the boring, fart-sniffing betas and gammas of this world because you're a conspiratard, saying it's not a globe. I mean, I definitely fit into that category, or have done for as long as I've existed on YouTube. It's just self-recognition versus fart-sniffing dweebery when Owen Benjamin professes to be some sort of expert in this regard, because he's talking about concepts that are advanced in heliocentric terminology. Would you agree? Yes, Nathan.
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah, but the problem is he's not. Okay, yeah, you said it 10 years ago, but you're not saying it now. There's got to be some sort of growth where you. I don't even know if growth is the right word.
I mean, if somebody sympathises with Owen Benjamin, like he needs better rhetoric, tell him about what we do. You know, if you're watching this and you have a connection to Owen Benjamin, I personally don't. I never established that connection. It was a bit late in the game while people were abandoning me and telling people I was a scammer, and people were deserting me left and right rather than making new connections at that particular point in flat earthing. So I never actually made any connections with Owen Benjamin, not that I can remember. I don't think I've got his contact details, not that I can remember. I might have. But either way, I haven't, from memory, haven't had any relationship with him. Know of a route that I could get through to him, say, you know, let's sit down for 10 minutes. Now, when I've done that with other people, Dave Weiss being an example, they've rejected the information. In that particular instance with Dave, it was about science and the scientific method. He didn't want to know it. Now I know why, after the fact. He had allegiances with other people. Now, it might be that Owen Benjamin responds in the exact same way and goes, I don't want to hear it. I'm like, okay. But if he's unaware of it, he might be very much open to what we cover here in terms of how all roads do lead to a flat Earth by prerequisite to create this idea that he's bracing against. It does sound like he's unaware that to brace against this system requires Earth be measured flat to fantasize it into existence for him to brace against it. It does not sound like he's aware of that. So if you know Owen Benjamin, then get in touch and let him know. Say, look, we've Flat Earth Debate have covered you and what you're doing, and with a tiny amount of polish, it sounds like he's got enough advanced heliocentric understanding for us to never need to ever explain any of that stuff to him. But just say, here's a couple of pointers: the equatorial plane, the Polaris-based North Pole centric system, latitude, longitude, coordinates, just a few, like half a dozen, a handful of flat Earth prerequisite measurements that get you to the globe. And he'd probably go, holy shit. So all of these aspects require a regression to the flat Earth measurement before I start exploring why it's not heliocentric. So first measure flat Earth, then create heliocentrism, and then where Owen Benjamin's at, brace against heliocentrism. We're not a speck of dust. So if he can see the horse that comes before the cart, maybe he won't actually find it necessary to brace against the heliocentrism that allows there to be a perception of a debate to begin with. He assists that. Would you not agree? There's something that's a bit critical of him. What he's doing actually enables the debate to be perceived to exist when everyone's reliant on the flat Earth measurements. There is no debate, but he's propping up the idea that there is by doing this. Would you agree?
Yes.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
the thing is, what you're talking about is epistemology, and we, as a channel, have pretty much got to the very bottom of our epistemology and their epistemology as well. So our understanding is at a base level undermining everything they do after that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people that you've approached and we've approached, and they've heard us just deal with the actual measurements, for some reason, don't like to take that on board for some strange reason. Even people who've been on this panel and in other servers, Discord servers, who know what we're saying, how we deal with telling people how it's measured flat, and the list you've just rhymed off, Nathan. But for some reason, they don't seem to want to use it. Kind of very strange.
Well, it's from our own side, when some of them have admittedly now departed from our group, were bracing against the notion of Earth being measured flat initially. It was because it detracted from their fart-sniffing notions. So if I take this to a perception of potentially, like theoretically or hypothetically, why Owen Benjamin might brace against this. If I say, first you measure Earth flat to get radial values and put them into orbital motion. Then, from orbital motion, you scale it to make you very small in this system. And then from you being very small in this system, you can explain how, from a theoretical or theological point of view, that is incongruent with the actual reality that you find yourself in. The 3 steps in between that you're knowledgeable on, that's Owen Benjamin, and I'm not going to deny, he does seem quite knowledgeable about heliocentrism when he comes out with this rhetoric so fluently. I immediately think, yeah, he understands base level understanding of a heliocentric model and how it's alleged to function when he uses this sort of verbiage. But by saying the flat Earth bit gets measured first to create these other steps that you're bracing against, he might say, well, my knowledge that I've acquired in these steps in between about heliocentrism do actually make me seem like I'm professing to be more intellectual. And I don't want to give that up by just going to the meat and potatoes of how that system originated in flat Earth measurements, because I have to give up the B and C in between of it. I'm just going from A, Earth's measured flat, to D, we're not a speck of dust. I need the B and C of it in between to make me seem like an intellectual. Therefore, I'd rather just stick to going through how Earth is non-spherical with an exemplary understanding to my audience of how spherical I understand it not to be, rather than just cutting the legs off the entire argument from the get-go by saying, well, it's just measured flat. Because it just being measured flat means I'm on no different a level of anybody else in their intellectual prowess. And I want to be superior to their intellectual prowess. And if I just tell them it's just measured flat, they can comprehend this as quickly as that. And they don't need me anymore. What have I got to offer? An advanced level understanding of heliocentrism? Isn't that the very thing we need to brace against? Well, if I'm here to guide you about what you are bracing against, then I'm dependent, or you're dependent on me knowing and explaining it to you. Whereas if you just know it's measured flat, who cares? Oh, I don't need that fart-sniffing heliocentrism. I understand that it's based foundationally upon measuring Earth flat. Here's a couple of the measurements. You then relinquish the necessity to invest all this fart-sniffing time in heliocentrism to unpack it for a third party. So that's the reason why he might brace against us when we say, oh, you don't need any of that shite anymore. It's just measured flat. There you go. He might do, he might not. We'll see. If he even gets wind, we're a very small channel here. Maybe he'll never even find out we reacted to his videos. Surf Daddy's not around to tell me if we've actually exceeded. We've got several timestamps. And I don't know, I will play a little bit more, but I don't actually know where to move on to the next timestamp section. So we'll just play it and we'll see how we get on.
Right? When you say it clearly, it's ridiculous. And it's not because I don't know the science. 186,000.
In a category error. So it's not science.
There you go.
Okay, so I said this recently, and I'm going to publish this. I've already published it on TikTok. So if there's a few times that members-only videos will make it to TikTok and members of YouTube only. So, you know, if you're too cheap to want to join me as a member and support me financially, you can actually pop over to TikTok and pick up a similar video. But this instance, I've talked about this in explicit detail. Science being the fight between the fart-sniffing betas and globe-cuck gammas and the deemed to be slightly lower socially idiot flat earthers bracing against the heliocentrism. This is a perfect example. This is kept in a science category, like he's just professed it to be. What, you bracing against the fart-sniffing dweebs who think they're moving around the sun heliocentric, and you saying you're not a speck of dust moving around the sun heliocentric? That's Earth being a ball and Earth not being a ball. That's what he's arguing for in the category of science. Over here, we've got geography, measuring flat Earth elevation angles for radial values, measuring flat Earth for longitude and latitude positionally, measuring flat Earth to create an equatorial plane to be on and inside a glorified protractor measured from flat Earth elevation angles and azimuth in directionality terminology. All of these things that we describe here on the cutting edge of flat Earth and flat earthing are geography, kept in a separate category, because both sides of the science debate of being a speck of dust moving around the sun or not being a speck of dust moving around the sun are categorized incorrectly because they've been taught from the science books. It's not science, it's maths, it's geography. It's got sod all to do with cause and effect reasoning and the scientific method. That's physics, otherwise known as science, the scientific method, establishing the cause of naturally occurring phenomena. That's things occurring in the physical nature of our existence, otherwise known as physics. Measuring Earth's flat surface for a radial value to turn into a heliocentric model to move it around the sun mathematically is not physics. It's the extrapolation of flat Earth measurements into models that are mathematical only. The models are maths, pure maths. Good. Good.
I was going to say this is a perfect time for him to say we see too far, because
Maybe
that
that's what
will allow the existence of a phenomenon of seeing too far. There's your phenomenon. You see too far.
That's not a phenomenon either,
science,
as much as it's alleged to be. You know, what John's saying is they'll pick an observation and try and conjure that into the suggestion of cause and effect reasoning based on natural phenomena. That's your point, right, John?
Yeah. And by asking that or making that statement of we see too far, right, that is to invoke phenomena. That you're inviting the debate and you're moving yourself into a category that you shouldn't be in.
Right. It conjures the illusion of it being justified when they suggest that seeing too far. Let's unpack that. If we see a clock in the distance, so there's a couple of guys, this is in the book, this exact description with a cartoon of a couple of guys stood looking at a clock in the distance. And one guy says to the other, check it out, I can see a clock. I could almost read the time off it. Wow. And the guy next to him goes, what do you mean? It's not a clock. That's a slightly looming, non-standard refraction, holographic projection of a clock from behind the physical reified geometric sphere edge horizon we know as Earth curve at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. Therefore, because it's beyond the limitations of a geometric sphere edge at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, we are seeing too far. It's not a clock, it's a mirage! What are you, some kind of idiot flat earther? And the guy goes, no, I just see a clock. I've got a set of eyeballs. And that should be the end of the discussion. But just seeing something isn't a phenomena. Like me seeing a clock, that's not something occurring. It's just me seeing things. When I see the tree out my window, is that a phenomena? No, I'm just looking at a tree. Well, what about if the tree's 3 miles away? I'm just still seeing a tree. It's not a phenomena. A phenomenon is something occurring, something happening. A leaf falling from the tree, that could be justifiable as a naturally occurring phenomena that you want to establish the cause of. That is, why did it happen? Why did the leaf fall from the tree? Not, I see a tree. What about if you blink? I see it again! Phenomena. No, but it creates the idea, it conjures the idea that it's a justifiable category to be in the scientific genre when exploring what we see. Like, what we see, that's optics. You can describe that with mathematics if you like, but it's not science. It's not establishing the cause of naturally occurring phenomena based in the physical reality we inhabit. That's physics, governed by the scientific method. The elucidation of cause and effect based on naturally occurring phenomena, that's seeing something happen, and then your ability to suppose a cause of that phenomena. So that's a dependent variable, that's naturally occurring phenomena, and independent variable, presumed cause of its effect. Then you can formulate something called a scientific prediction, which is an if and then statement. If my presumed cause, then the phenomena will occur, mirrored by something called a zero difference result, or null. If my presumed cause is varied, then I won't see the phenomena occur. That's a zero difference result, or null hypothesis. Both exist in a scientific prediction, so that you can vary your presumed cause, or independent variable, to see if it causes the dependent variable. The empiricism being offered if you validate that which you presumed caused the effect, or when varying that which you assumed will cause the effect, crossing out your alternative prediction and validating, that's putting a tick next to, the null hypothesis. Now, you don't test for the null, but if you find nothing occurs, zero difference result, you do, ipso facto, validate, that's prove, the null hypothesis. That's where the empiricism comes when you do scientific endeavours. That's to experiment. If, on the other hand, you do validate the cause of the effect by way of your supposition being validated as the cause, then you rule out the null. You can't have them both cause and not cause the effect simultaneously. Only one can be true. So you validated the cause of the effect. That's science. What about measuring something, the distance to the clock? So we know if it's too far, what, based on there being a geometric limitation at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet? Oh, so we need to measure Earth then, flat, to run it through this calculation. Yeah, we do, yeah. Well, at best, that's maths. It's definitely not geography if you're running maths of Earth measurement through a calculation that's already got a predetermined radius value that's also been measured off a flat Earth. It means the maths is incongruent with the physical reality. But it's just maths. Definitely not science, and definitely not a phenomena when you suggest we're seeing beyond what the maths derived from flat measurements of a ball says we should see. My eyeballs govern what I see, not what maths says I should or shouldn't. Not a phenomena, not science, not geography. The only geography in it is your measurement off a flat Earth. That's your elevation. Height, 1.22 times the square root of the observer's height off a flat Earth. It's perpendicular to sea level. That's what the only measurement is. The output will give you a linear distance in miles. Also, with a flat Earth prerequisite below the surface level that you're measuring when you're at an altitude above a surface level. Also labelled in the maths as parallel eye level and surface level. All flat Earth prerequisites. Anything else for anybody else to add before we move on? I think that might be a... We'll see if this is the end of the clip.
Miles, 240,000 miles away.
A flat Earth measurement, my friend.
The sun is 93,000 miles away. It's
93 million miles, according to the heliocentric model. I take it all back. Owen doesn't have the slightest idea what he's babbling about when he says that the sun is 93,000 miles away. No, by way of Keplerian and Huygens-scaled heliocentrical elliptical orbital motion, the scale will give you a 93 million mile sun. That's based on an R-based value being superimposed onto Venus for the transit of Venus and the occultation of the sun partially by a scalable light called Venus, ascribed a radial value measured flat here on Earth. That's how we get 93 million miles. Now, up until then, Owen Benjamin seemed like he understood what heliocentrism was and what it stood for, and the values that would make him a speck of dust. Now he just seems like an idiot who doesn't know what he's talking about, doesn't he?
Well, he said, it's not like I don't know the science.
It's not like you don't know anything. Well, you did. You just gave it in a value that isn't congruent with Huygens-scaled Keplerian distances with elliptical orbital motion. You don't know what you're babbling about. Now, I thought you did, but you don't.
Pulsar is I know what they're saying.
Let me just get this absolutely 100% fucking clear. Owen Benjamin does not know what they are saying. He's projecting his own ineptitude when it comes to this subject matter. No, Owen, you do not know what they are saying because they are not saying 93,000 miles. Unequivocally, you got it wrong, which means you do not know what they are saying. You are misrepresenting them. Now, for somebody that's suggested to be an advocate of flat Earth, that pisses me off royally, especially when you overtly state that you do know what they're saying. Owen Benjamin, shut up about this subject. You haven't got the slightest fucking clue what you're babbling about. How dare you represent our so-called opponent's position and then say you know what they're saying? You do not. Now, if I was a heliocentrist, I'd be absolutely livid. Because you're telling this man that you know what the opponent says. You don't. That's an embarrassment. What a joke.
But I also know why, and I don't think very many people are.
If you don't know what they're saying, how can you possibly know why they are saying it when you've got what they say wrong? So now we're into a shit show, aren't we? Of him sniffing his own fucking farts like he's an intellectual. I did compliment him like he was an intellectual and actually done his primary source research and got an understanding of this shit. Now I'm just going to chastise him for being a retard. Owen Benjamin, you are a retard. You haven't got the slightest clue what you're babbling about. This becomes a shit show of ignorance from this point forth. No doubting in my mind what this will now become. Yeah? An arrogant fart-sniffing shit show while you pretend to understand heliocentrism. What a joke.
We're in on it. I don't think you need that many people at all.
Something I think would be useful for the entirety of this conversation. Are you familiar with, I'm not sure if you watched the entirety of Tucker's and I's podcast, but we talked about, he said the X-ray theory, where like you look at things in their reverse contrast.
Dude, genius. I said.
Sorry, is it just me or has the host just offered a completely non sequitur subject change?
Yep.
He doesn't have the slightest clue either, so he's just going to completely change the subject. Right, next clip.
Way to weaken people, you know, to like get them jacked up on too much stimulation, and then population goes down. Everyone's got a Subaru.
Who do you think is the single most powerful wizard alive today?
I don't think you know his name. Dude, I want to write a movie about it. It's called Synap. Because sometimes I feel like I know almost too much about it, where I'm like, am I kind of like, why do I know this? Like, that's kind of weird. And I because like the craft of comedy can be awesome at relieving stress.
Say again, whoever that was.
I said that was probably the most cringy thing I've ever heard anyone say. Is yes, I know just too much about this.
He is the fart sniffer of all.
But it can also be super dark, right? And so I'm like, why is my craft so dark? Like, I know how to do these cynical things. And I want to write this movie where I get like kicked out of Hollywood, all that stuff. And I'm in a farm and I'm desolate. And I start getting these things in the mail that...
You mean you want to write a story about you and what's happened to you? You mean that's an autobiography? It's not a story, that's an autobiography.
Just
well,
says
I could
like...
give him some advice.
Good.
Don't let your friends help you.
Synap, SINEP, and it just says, keep pulling the thread and all this stuff. Like this benefactor. And it turns out it's basically the devil. And he was like, I don't know if you call it.
So what I'm reading between the lines is, I want to write a story where all the woes that have happened to me are because of the devil. That's what he's just said, isn't it? Right? I don't know why this is timestamped.
The devil, but he's like, he was from early 20th century. He's like centuries old. And he was trying to do stand-up and Hitler was taking his jokes. You know, it's like this whole story. And so cynically, to show how everyone sucked, he started doing all these spells. And Synap is the biggest corporation in the world and just penis backwards. Because everything's like a peanut. Like the rockets. Blue Origin's literally a dick. The CEO is Dave Limp. Literally Dave Limp. Is
Is that true? The CEO of Blue Origin's called Dave Limp?
I think so.
I did not know that. Very funny.
CEO. Fact. I will not apologize for making that connection. And so he's like, I'm like, how are you 180 years old? He's like, I don't eat the funny food. I'm like, what's the funny food? He's like, all the food I feed you, it's like poison. Isn't that hilarious? And so my conflict, I'm like, it's so funny, but it's so evil. And then my conflict is like to reject evil because the joke is on man versus the joke is on evil. I try to keep all my jokes like mocking weakness, evil, all that. There's an evil comedy that mocks man. Like, look how stupid, because the devil's always like, you think they're better than me, God? I was your special boy, right? It's like, because God gave us dominion and he was, that envy, the envious one is what the Muslims call shaitan, right? And so he's always like mocking man. Like, look what I got him to believe. Like,
I don't know, this appeal to motivation for the deception just seems weak to me. It's unsubstantiated, weak, maybe good for jokes, but in terms of taking people taking you seriously, I don't think it does particularly a good job of that. But I mean, that's not his motivations, jokes, so fine.
But it's all good news. Like, I'm not saying this like people should be bummed. It's actually like really cool to see that we have like so much agency, and it's like fair, kind of,
If we had a mutual goal, I guess, because I want more people to think in a different way.
I hate this general beta cuck gamma attitude, right? Now we're going to hear this guy's general gamma nature where he's the secret king and people follow his way of thinking. Oh, God, this is so tedious.
Personally.
Like, what do you mean by different? I'll get it.
Like, in a way that they're more open to stuff. It's like, I can't even, like, get my parents to, like, get on board with one conspiracy or one things aren't the way you...
Why'd you give the tiniest of shits? Who cares whether or not your parents are on board with it? Will that validate it for you if mommy and daddy agree with it and they accept it based on your understanding and your ability to pass it on to them? Who cares? Like, get a grip. Have some autonomy. My God.
I think they are, because there's not like a good one to get your foot in the door.
Well, I think this isn't about dialectic or truth or proofs. It's about rhetoric. So what I like to do is people a lot of times will reject that because they're afraid of what's on the other side.
What a load of bollocks. No, when it comes to the subject that you've already covered, it wasn't about rhetoric, which you got wrong, by the way. And then declared how much you understood their position. But nevertheless, in spite of you getting their rhetoric wrong, it's about mathematics and measurements when it actually boils down to the primary source research that you obviously haven't done in this subject arena. Yeah, when it comes down to it, it's actually based on measurements of Earth for you to brace against us being a speck of dust in an infinite, ever-expanding super-nothingness. Where does that come from? What are the origins? You haven't done any primary source research for this. That's what this tells me. It was abundantly clear when we were in the Worldwide Debates Discord server a while back that people don't actually check where their information comes from. They just parrot it. Because that's how they were trained in a high school that was paid for by the state. They teach you to read and repeat. They don't say, where do you think that came from? How did that person form that opinion? Who told him it? Oh, you found out who told him it? How did they find out where that information came from? What did they get it from? Oh, they got it from a measurement. Who measured it? Oh, they measured it. What did they measure? And how did they measure it? Nobody's doing that. This person says it, I'll repeat it. That's what's happening here. That's not a good way of existing. And it leads you to think that it's about how well you can repeat the information back to an audience. That's rhetoric. Well, no, it's not about the rhetorical nature of the information. If you look at its primary source, the origin of this information specifically is Earth measurement. That's geometry. The geometric nature of the world that we inhabit is flat by measurement.
Or they feel shame, like that means I'm a dupe, I've been tricked, I've lived a lie, all this stuff.
No, why? Why would you have this type of introspection? This annoys me as well. I'm trying to tell people to have a level of introspection in terms of their indifference to the measurements because they're not consequential to them. How you perceive rhetoric and how it makes you feel after the fact is, this is my standard, not Owen's, inconsequential to the measurements. The difference here is I'm right. You are absolutely, without question, utterly inconsequential when it comes to Earth measurements. I mean, I can put a hand on heart and say so am I. Yeah, me delivering this news to Owen Benjamin will not change how flat Earth gets measured, and always was. For example, but not limited to create a notion of a world moving around the sun with a distance scaled by Huygens, with a sun that's 93 million miles away in that system based on flat Earth measurements. The flat Earth measurements will still absolutely be foundational, regardless of how well Neil deGrasse Tyson parrots out that rhetoric. It won't alter something that you have no bearing on. The whole trick is to make it seem like you are consequential to this, and there is a debate to have about it. But in this respect, Owen's perpetuating that by suggesting it's about rhetoric. No, it's not. He's just wrong.
Stuff.
Right.
That's why I like to make it fun, funny, and like not a bit. That's why pandas are perfect.
I agree.
Yeah, because it's like fun, right? Because if you say the moon landing didn't happen, so my grandfather was a liar, so those memories I had, so all the books I read, like, and it's like, no, your grandfather's not a liar. And learning all that shit is really.
Well, hold on. It depends what his grandfather is. Is his grandfather saying he went to the moon and did the moon landing? No. If we're going to measure distance to the moon, we need altitude, distance, and trajectory. These are all flat Earth by prerequisites. If you do the primary source research for the moon landing, this is slightly untrue. They accidentally lost the trajectory information. Yeah, the information that would actually have all flat Earth measurements riddled all over it, because that's what measurements of Earth are. They lost those for the moon landing. The only source that would actually have a predetermined flat Earth by prerequisite, detailed and logged for the journey, doesn't exist anymore. But for anything else in ballistic trajectory, we can unequivocally state, without exception, Earth's measured flat for that. Because it is. That's the primary source information for if you're taking a journey in a rocket. It has to travel in a ballistic trajectory, otherwise known as flight data. Do we have flight data for the moon? Oh, we don't. Well, then we haven't got any measurements. Who gives a shit? Without measurements, don't be interested in what they assert. If they've got something to assert, understanding that this isn't about the science of the Game Boy level computing power on the shuttle, it's about the measurements. Let's see them.
Interesting. And maybe it happened. I just don't think so. Neither.
No, you can't travel to a second law of thermodynamics violating sky vacuum based on Keplerian and Huygens scales that are derived from flat Earth measurements by prerequisite that are violated when you conceptualize and reify this mathematics. Go ahead, whoever that is.
Either does Vivian.
Is that somebody wanting to hear something again?
And Kubrick. I had Vivian Kubrick on, and I was like, "You think your dad shot it?" And she goes, "No, it would have looked real."
How the fuck would she know? She was about 1 year old when Kubrick shot the moon landing, if he shot the moon landing. But shooting the moon landing won't change that there's measurements. It's a journey. You're telling me that we can retain black box information at all costs, but we don't have the effective equivalent in black box data for this journey? Yeah, that's the reality of it. Doesn't matter, we've still got black box data from anything that's ever flown anywhere ever. And it's all ballistic trajectory with respect to a flat plane. That's how it works. That's how it's measured. How do you think we measure height and distance? Do you think we measure those in terms of how well the lighting is in a studio set? No, we're in complete category error. Asking somebody whose dad used to make movies whether or not he made a specific movie is irrelevant. What I can tell you about the moon landing, if you assess it in this form, is that it is definitely on a set. It's got a backdrop. Who cares who shot it?
Production guys like me, like, I don't know shit about rockets. I know about production.
So why are you talking about it then? This annoys me. Don't keep in your wheelhouse. You know, stay in the lane that you're adapted to. If you think that you're a production expert, I didn't actually know that Owen Benjamin was involved in any production. I thought he was an actor in some MTV pranking production, but I didn't know he was involved with the actual production side of it. Maybe that's something new to me, but now he's claiming to be a production expert as opposed to ballistic trajectory expert. But you're talking about ballistic trajectory though, aren't you? Yeah? But because you don't know what you don't know, you're going to talk about something ancillary to it, which is exactly what they want. Whether or not Kubrick did it, it's going to be trajectories that you need to actually measure if you're going to suggest any validity to this shit, as opposed to whether or not there's a backdrop, which there is. But picking apart the fakery of NASA is to be at the most basic level of this understanding that there is.
And I'm like, you're not doing a live feed in negative 273 degrees in a vacuum, 240,000 miles away with a
230,000 miles away. What you mean as in the derived distance based on radial value? That's also an altitude from sea level. That's what that is. That's the altitude that you'll traverse from surface level if you're going to suggest that you've got a ballistic trajectory resulting in an orbital motion that's already been measured with radial values off a flat plane to create the orbital motion and scale it by way of Huygens' suggestion that the transit of Venus will give us this scaled distance to the moon. This is all the same extrapolation, by the way. There's no difference. It's all based on the Keplerian Huygens scaled elliptical orbital motion given to us by Kepler. All of this is based on the same shit. The same exact flat Earth extrapolated values in mathematics only. That's where we get this 230,000, miles to the moon. Okay. You need a flat Earth for that.
The tilt-up rack focus was something going 3,000 feet per second. I'm like,
feet per second? Sounds very much like a flat Earth value. All of these are. We're now just getting one after the next flat Earth prerequisite values.
that logistically is impossible in production. So if they said...
Whoa. So instead of focusing on the measurements that you've already got a few values of speed over distance. Yes, a flat Earth measurement. Distance, altitude, yeah, flat Earth measurements. Orbital motion, yeah, they're flat Earth measurements. They're not. They're extrapolated calculations after flat Earth measurements. But what's the difference? They're all dependent foundationally on Earth being measured flat. What's that? We didn't have the production values? Whoa, wait a non sequitur.
Yeah, all the footage is fake, but we were there. I literally probably would have been like, oh, cool.
What does that mean? All the footage was fake? No, the footage was real. We've definitely got footage. It's just the ballistic trajectory that had got you there relied quite heavily on Earth being measured flat to produce it mathematically, and then suggest it, and then lose the data that cross-referenced it with the orbital motions. Because then you'd see the flat Earth prerequisites in the scale values that give you the distances and altitudes and feet per second. They're all flat Earth measurements, though, by prerequisite. Axiomatically required to have flat surfaces be utilised to give us these derivative values like speed, altitude, and distance.
But they're like, oh, no, they're playing golf.
Every single part of it is real.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, dude, the production, I'm like, so if that production is real, like, I don't trust you now. Because you know what it's like tilt up, rack focus. So like a rocket's going up, you're...
Going what? Up? So what, like perpendicular to a plane of reference in an orientation vertical to the horizontal? Yeah, up is a flat Earth measurement, Owen. You're whistling past all these flat Earth measurements in your ignorance of this subject matter, whilst professing to be some sort of heliocentric expert. Irritating.
Tilting up and focusing in.
Tilting? Well, like an angle from the horizontal? Quite a few flat Earth prerequisites you're using there, Owen, without even realising it.
You're doing it from remote control, 240,000 miles away. The first...
Did I say it? Well, like an altitude from sea level, based on an orbital motion derivation, with a scale from Huygens.
Time you try it in a vacuum from Houston through a radiation belt, no. Like the amount of energy you need, like a battery gets shitty when it's 30 degrees.
These are just shite arguing points. The battery wouldn't have been powerful enough. What, for the flat Earth scale distances and orbital motion? We need flat Earth measurements for this. Who gives a shit if battery technology wasn't good enough? Oh, it just leaves it in a circumstance where they can say, yeah, it was. What are you going to do? Are you a physicist? Are you going to show them how the battery technology weren't good enough? And if you do, will that prove that we're not on a sphere moving around the moon? Or the moon moving around us, I should say. No, far from it. The battery technology is completely non sequitur. But here's the shite that someone like Owen Benjamin will argue with. It's preordained to be this way, by the way. These are the talking points given to the hippies, pot-smoking, sandal-wearing wankers that represent flat Earth. This is the talking points you get given when you're arriving in this subject from some ancillary conspiratard subject that you've been investigating.
Negative 273 degrees. No, like, so give me the battery. Like, can I buy the battery? Because my batteries get real shitty at 0 degrees.
You never have to buy a new wallet again. That's why we invented the...
Right, I think that's pretty much it. I think there was only the 3 timestamp clips that I was given by Surf Daddy. Has anybody got any comment on this? Anybody?
I don't know what to comment on that.
No? Because if not, I'm going to round out the live stream.
On a slip of the tongue. When he said 93,000 miles, I think he knows it's 93 million. He just cocked up on the spot.
Yeah, but you can't do that.
Hold on.
If you're going to say it's not like I don't know
what are you saying?
science.
What you're saying is it's a misspeak. But he's talking about rhetoric, isn't he?
Yes. And
Right.
he said it's not like I don't know the science. And then go on to
Exactly.
describe 93,000 miles. Come on, no.
No, you don't say it's not like I don't know the science when you've literally 3 seconds earlier got it wrong. You know what I mean? I just can't make that up. Can you?
Nope.
It's just because he's prideful. Pride always comes before a fall. In this particular instance, he's so proud that he understands this shit. And then he's got it wrong. Whilst declaring how smart he is about it. I know all about this science. Sometimes I don't know where I pull this stuff from. Love it. I'd like him as an ally. The guy's funny, right? He does make me laugh. Slaves have a choice. Hilarious, right? Very funny guy. I'd like him on my side with decent rhetoric. Yeah? By rhetoric, I mean stone cold absolute facts of Earth's flat measurements. If he understood that, he'd be a lot more effective when talking to these people. Because instead of saying, oh, we don't know if these footages have been real or whether or not we're a speck of dust in an infinite expanding super nothingness, he could just say, it's not that serious, bro. It's just measured flat. For everything, always, without exception. Any measurements of Earth are flat. That's the end of this discussion. Nothing you will offer me will ever challenge that fact. And anything you suggest you've got to challenge that fact will have its origins in flat Earth measurements also. Without exception. Anything that's alleged to be congruent with Earth's shape, if you're suggesting sphericity, or just congruent with an Earth measurement, will and can only be flat. Those sorts of statements end these discussions. Whereas if you leave it in this ethereal world of whether or not we got a sky vacuum, or whether or not the footage is fake, or this sort of shite, allows for endless debate. It's nothing concise or conclusive about this when you describe it in these terminologies. The preordained, fart-sniffing, hippie rhetoric that you're given as a flatty when you get here. Yeah, that's the controlled opposition version. So that it's kept separate from geography. When you call it fucking science incorrectly, Owen Benjamin. Yeah, it tells me you haven't got a clue about this subject, frankly. And it is embarrassing.
Well, if you look at type of people, look just in your mind, go back and see the type of people that fought hard against saying it's measured flat. He falls right in that category.
Right on. Any more for any more? No. With that, I will say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow.
Adam, QE. The guys over 24/7. These are all freaking guys that want to be the gurus. What's it?
Are you talking about the fat sniffers from our own side?
Yeah, the ones that still want to hold the position, like there's a position to hold, they fight against measurement. They say you can't say it's been measured flat. Then what is it? What's the size? That's the things you get.
Did you say they ask for the size when you say it's measured flat? If you say it's
how do you-
measured to be an electric car, what do you mean it's measured to be electric? What's the displacement?
Basically, because you say what's your proof of flat Earth, they say it's just
Flat's
measured
not a
that way. Oh
size.
yeah, how big is it?
Flat's not a size, though. How big is flat? Well, that's a nonsensical, garbage convolution of a question. What size is flat? You're like, what? Flat's not a size, it's an aspect. What size is vertical? How big's vertical? Go.
That's the deal. That's why you can't say it's measured flat, because when you talk about a measurement, you have to tell me what you're measuring and its size.
Okay, miles. All of them. at any value ever, if in reference to Earth and its size. Any measurement of Earth ever in linear miles is a flat Earth prerequisite measurement of Earth's surface in miles. That's how we've surveyed it. So if they say, oh, well, I must have a distance, any distance, the distance across the UK is measured in miles. If you give a distance for the size of this island I am currently on, it will be given you in linear flat miles. That's how it's measured. It's fact. You want a size? Any size of anything measured ever in miles. There you go, done. But flatness is not a size of anything. Saying it's measured flat is just an axiomatic principality that we measure Earth with as an aspect of Earth and its surface. Not how big is flat. What a stupid response.
Yeah, those responses come from people that want to hold a position of superiority. And measuring it flat just levels the playing field.
It does sometimes feel like the dumbest shit we have to deal with comes from our own side.
Absolutely.
That's to be expected, right? Hippies and fart-sniffing conspiratards are going to offer up some dumb shit when it comes to this subject. The way it goes.
That's why I've been saying it for years. We're all alone here.
The discussion needs an idiot to brace against for the dweebs, and it needs the general public to be able to onlook and say, oh, the dweebs have got this covered. The people who invested in heliocentrism, they've got this. I don't need to worry about it. And the dweebs need to feel like they're elevated above the lowest of the low. I mean, look how low the bar has to be set to give the people who are enemies of flat Earth the confidence to engage in the subject. You've got to set that bar for your opponent so low to engage the lowest of society in reality to be able to feel the confidence to engage with it. Dweebs who engage in heliocentrism, which is boring, right, are the most spineless dweebs, cucks, gammers and beaters the Earth has to offer. Like I say, to have them feel the tiny bit of confidence needed to brace against an opponent, that opponent's got to be even lower than that societally, hasn't it? And universally ridiculed by the entire population for them to feel the confidence needed to brace against that opponent. The hippie that won't normally fight back, that's so passive anyway.
It would be interesting.
I'm sorry, were you describing me?
You? Why? Are you quite passive? What are you saying? You're a fart-sniffing dweeb? Or are you saying that you're a pot-smoking, open-toe sandal-wearing hippie? Which one?
I mean, I like sneakers more than sandals.
It would be interesting to see how he would respond to the information.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This guy, Owen Benjamin, thinks he's fucking Nephilian. He thinks he's...
That's correct.
He thinks he's cast down from the frickin' heavens.
Yep.
Right. This guy's so up his own arse. Do you think he absolutely will brace against me? If he hears me saying you're wrong, you've got this wrong, after declare, you know, he'll feel like I'm his enemy, won't he?
Nathan, first and foremost, he's a comedian. He's like 6'7" tall, so I don't think he truly believes he's Nephilim. I think he's just having a bit of crack.
No, he thinks he's a Nephilim.
I've made worse mistakes than to confuse thousands with millions.
Did you
I'm gonna give
specifically
him that.
say that you understood your opponent's position moments after doing it? Like saying, I understand how a gearbox works better than the engineers do, and then getting it wrong immediately after saying it. The engineers are just going to laugh at you, aren't they?
Yeah, I was trying to think of a comparison. That's funny. It's not like I don't understand the mechanics and you go on to explain freaking installing tile or something.
Well, it's like saying, it's not like I don't understand how an electric car works. You put petrol in it and off it goes.
There you go. Oh, that's funny.
And people say, no, it's just a slip of the tongue, he meant electricity. Why didn't he say that then? Is it that he doesn't understand the rhetoric, what the rhetorical bit, the bit they say all the time?
I remember though he did use one of your clips. I'm talking years ago with the gas pressure without containment. That whole the way you laid it out. Earth being if we were in a sky vacuum. I remember we went over it. It was one of his videos.
So he's suggesting he's a fallen Nephilim and he's actually using a genuine fallen angel's material. How outrageous.
Knowledge of the clouds, man. No, but he did. He used I think it was one of your shorts breaking down the sky vacuum that he really liked. So you might have a little in, you know what I mean?
I doubt it.
You're going to know him by his fruits, right?
What are you saying? I've been too harsh on him.
I was saying that, like, all right, like measured flat, that was a shock to like the whole of the topic, right? And like to get to where we've been through some fights, and like we've been through some piece of nonsense. I'm saying that you get better over time, and maybe he's going to get better over time.
He's saying the same things from 2016. From what I understand, this video was 3 days ago.
That's right.
He hasn't mentioned anything about a measurement.
Well, maybe he doesn't know. I mean, he's got as far as he's got, and what he's doing is he's rebuilding his reputation as opposed to his flat Earth rhetoric. So he's out, he's on the podcast tour, he's doing what I want to do with my book, right? But that's because he's trying to build a reputation for Owen Benjamin, the person, not necessarily the internal understanding of the discussion points that he covers when he's being interviewed. He just wants to be out and be popular again. And the devil stopped him from being popular. You know, I just have to take him. Well, that's what he said. You know, I'm just taking him based on what he's saying. He might say it in a context that I want to write a book about a guy that was outcast from Hollywood, what like you were, and then went and lived on a farm, what like you did. It's like, okay. And that's because of what? Oh, it was the devil. I'm pretty sure you were just Jew bashing. Am I wrong? Isn't that why you got, excluded?
I think that was one of the reasons.
Okay, so he was in an industry predominantly run by Jews and started Jew bashing.
What'd you say, Len?
I think the main reason he got kicked out of Hollywood, so to speak, is because he was opposed to people giving kids trans hormones and stuff. The likes of Charlize Theron, who transitioned a 3-year-old kid. I think that was the main point.
I see. So he didn't toe the line with Hollywood's favoritism for transgendering people, or whatever the term is, transitioning people.
I think it had to do more with the tiny hats.
Not gonna lie, I am coming around.
Who is?
I think that's what he said.
I was just kidding. I was just hearing what about him because I don't really pay attention to it. So I don't know much about him.
Are you coming around to transitioning? You thinking about trying a vagina out?
I'm coming around to Owen Benjamin.
I mean, I enjoyed that. I mean, we've covered plenty of people, right? And I, generally speaking, and I stand by what I said in the pre-show, I enjoy watching Owen Benjamin. It is always a laugh. Now, admittedly, there's been points that have irritated me, but the ability to get people's passionate juices flowing is also a skill that not all possess. So today's live show flowed really quickly. That tends to suggest to me that he is entertaining and engaging. Not all people possess that.
He can't stand Joe Rogan. And I would love to see them two have a battle and Joe Rogan kick him in the chest.
Joe Rogan would kill him. If they fought, Joe Rogan would just kill him.
Annihilate him.
Yeah, just kill him. I would give it 30 seconds before he just destroyed him. He'd break his legs. It would be unpleasant. But that would be true for like 90% of people that were in front of Joe Rogan. He's a very trained, very highly trained, skilled martial artist with good technique. Even in his age, he's still got really good technique.
Hold on. Did you say Joe Rogan kick him in the stomach? Because I don't think that he's going to hold still while Joe Rogan gets the stepladder out so that he can reach his stomach to kick him.
There we go. That's the Owen Benjamin rhetoric there.
I think you'd be
Listen,
surprised.
I've seen that guy get up to throw some kicks, and I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of a kick. And even if he missed his stomach and hit him where? In the thigh and the knee? Well, it doesn't matter. He's going to shatter that. Guy's got a vicious kick, man.
Not just that, it's just being trained, right? Gassing out immediately. Most people, if they end up in a fight, are knackered within about 30 seconds.
Yeah, because they choke them out. They're not ready for it.
Yeah, they just get gassed out really quickly.
They know the pressure points. My cousin did this to me in a bar one night. He grabbed my wrist and did something. The next thing I know, I was getting up from the floor.
But that's just like, yeah, talking about a comedian versus a trained fighter. But on the other hand, Joe Rogan has, I wouldn't say he's necessarily brought off a comedic talent to what he does. The main talent Joe's got is relaying the general demeanour of the populace to the person that he's talking to. Like, he recognises where something complicated might need to be asked about what is meant by the person he's talking to. You know what I mean by that? He kind of asks the obvious, and it's not even the obvious question, the question that most people would ask if they were intelligent enough to know to ask it. I think Jordan Peterson once described him as playing dumb and saying that he asks the dumb questions, and I don't necessarily agree with that. But it's asking a question that seems obvious, but most people won't ask it because they don't want to seem stupid. So a slight spin on what Jordan Peterson was saying about Joe Rogan, because he was like, that's how you become a famous podcaster. You ask the questions that most of the audience wouldn't know they need an answer for, but ultimately that's a demonstration of knowing what people don't know, which is a level of intellect that most people don't have and therefore aren't Joe Rogan. He recognises this could be something that everybody else would want to know the answer to. Well, that obviously doesn't mean he doesn't... It might mean that he doesn't know, but he knows to ask, which is a skill. But that doesn't necessarily translate into a humorous interview. Whereas Owen Benjamin, generally speaking, you know, I've laughed out loud during that encounter. Now, regardless of if it's because he's, you know, actually stupid and thinks slaves have a choice. I don't think he does, though. I think he genuinely knows that that's going to get a really good laugh. out of somebody who's listening that's not stupid. There might be somebody who nods along because they're so dumb that they think he's being sincere, or he might actually be being sincere. You just don't know, but it doesn't matter. The result is a laugh, isn't it? So who cares? I can't think of anything I watch when Joe Rogan's doing it where something Joe Rogan said is so utterly absurd or so outrageous that you suddenly find yourself... I had my side hurt while I was laughing during the live show. Literally, I was laughing so hard, my side started to hurt because I thought it was that funny. I mean... But that's how you do it. You take something that's super serious, like slavery, turn it into something utterly absurd, and that gets a laugh. That's skill. And that's a skill Joe Rogan doesn't have. Just doesn't necessarily garner you a huge degree of popularity, which is unfortunate for Owen Benjamin. Calls him Toe Rogan, because he's the size of a toe.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Forget who it was, but there was some comedian called Joe Rogan a stool humper, I think it was, or like a bench humper, like because he would just grab things and start like making props out of them and whatnot. And I don't know. When I was younger, I kind of liked one of his stand-ups, and he did that, and that kind of hit. I was like, oh, he did do that.
I don't find Joe Rogan's stand-up that funny.
Yeah, I don't either.
I've seen clips of him, and I mean, maybe it's just an acquired taste that I don't have, but I don't know. It just didn't strike me as... That's not his skill. Well, that's not his main skill.
Comedy's hard.
I was going to say, that was going to be the next thing I said. Being funny is one of the hardest things. It's very difficult to do. And I don't want someone to go, oh, yeah, this is a coal miner. I go, fuck off. That's not what I mean. Intellectually, it's difficult to make people laugh.
Let me have a go then. Have you heard about the dyslexic pimp?
No.
He bought a warehouse.
You bought what?
A warehouse.
You bought a warehouse as opposed to a whorehouse. Very good.
That's the height of my hilarity.
Jolly good.
Say it again.
Have you heard of the dyslexic pimp? He accidentally bought a warehouse.
What's the opposite of Christopher Reeve? It's Christopher Walken.
I was about to say that. Hey, you want to hear a joke?
Go on.
Okay. So a baby seal walks into a club.
Terrible.
Oh, somebody told me that joke, and I laughed like 2 years later. No kidding.
That is that old argument.
Oh, yeah, no, you've set the joke up wrong. It's a chicken and egg are in the bed smoking a post-coital cigarette. And the chicken says, well, that answers that old argument.
Took me a few seconds, but I started laughing.
I got that from Sandy Toksvik.
Like, if you really want to know how to be unfunny, I can teach you all about being unfunny. Being funny, though, I don't think you can teach that.
I think the natural default position for most people is they're not funny, and they occasionally have moments of like a moment of levity, or like a moment of sobriety, like for an alcoholic, where they are occasionally very funny. But for most people, 99.9% of their life is spent being not funny. And the worst type of people are the people who are exactly in that position like most, but think they're funny.
But that's where I'm at, you know? Like, I think I'm funny, but I'm definitely not funny.
I make me laugh.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Can you keep yourself amused? Then that's the main thing.
What am I here to amuse you?
Or
Like
am I funny?
a clown?
Like a clown? Like a comedian? You think
When
I'm
I
funny?
hit this, I'm gonna say when I hit this microphone and stuff, I still have hard time with timing.
No, if
I
you want to
think
see
the
comedy at its best, watch Nathan on Worldwide Debate. Some of the stuff these guys come out with is laughable.
oh yeah, yeah. I'm still on that whole 8-hour damn thing he did, like trying to get through that, and it is hard to not just bust out laughing, and then I have to rewind it and hear because I'm laughing over top of what they're saying because they don't think it's funny at all. They're all serious about it, you know.
That's the funny part. One guy came in, he goes, "You do know that a mile's linear." Thank you very
Is that what he
much.
said? He said, you do realise that all mile measurements are linear. That was how he put it. You do realise that all mile measurements are linear, right? Yeah, welcome to Flat Earth, you
Yeah.
dumbass.
Yeah, but when I say linear, I mean curving. No, you don't.
I also admire the lack of self-awareness. Like from Buck Sodbuster. Like digging through my history and then saying you're scared of getting doxxed. Just so funny. And creepy.
I didn't hear that one. What was it?
Oh, you missed that, Refracted.
Just total lack of self-awareness. You know, these people project out their own insecurities and fears.
The opening to his engagement with Nathan was letting Nathan know he had information about him.
Yeah, the last time somebody did that, they went and looked up an old girlfriend that I was engaged to, like, when I was in my late teens. And they were like, I know this girl. I was like, what? The 5'8" blonde with big tits that I nearly married? What, you think you're going to hold that against me? Are you having a laugh? And I was like, yeah, I remember her. You know what I mean? People are so stupid when they hold stuff against you. Like,
I'll bring up
okay.
a guy that you brought to court and won the case on, and I'll make you look bad.
I'll bring up your accomplishments and try to make them seem like they're something to be ashamed of. Because that's how we do.
I mean, I don't feel like there's a great deal in my history that people would be able to dig out. I'm fairly open with most of the stuff that's gone on throughout my life. And because of the way I am in terms of YouTubing, I've put most of it online. That's no exception. Same goes for ex-girlfriends and stuff. Most of this stuff is existent online from my own volition to a certain extent. And that's because there's very little I can think of in my life that I'm ashamed of. You know, I generally do what I want to do. And I can't think of any particular instance. There's embarrassment when you get things wrong, when you are to be corrected for an inaccuracy that you have to own. But that's a different thing, right? That's having humility. But so long as you do actually demonstrate the humility after the fact, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Everyone makes mistakes. We're just human. So to shy away from mistakes that you've made, it's like, well, that's silly. You would never progress as a person if you didn't fail.
Yeah, like one of QE's things would like bring up where like you miss something, and if you were, it's real easy to get in the mindset of you have to defend everything that you do, you know. Like if you just accept that, you know, everybody makes mistakes, it doesn't bother you, you know. But it seems like in this topic, though, people want to be like they're a guru or something and get everything right all the time, and that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember I got this from a line in Red Dwarf when the computer says, "I'm the closest thing to infallible." But the crew goes, "You mean infallible?" And he goes, "Exactly." I'm the closest thing to infallible. The computer's got an IQ of 6,000.
I tell you what, man, I ain't never wrong, except that one time, and I was wrong about that.
Yeah, that's something we should cover on one of the shows one day. The complete lack of humility from our opponents. I've never been able to understand it. Why, when you're wrong, can't you just admit it? Why can't you just accept it? You got it wrong. It's not that big of a deal. But some of the people that used to oppose us, I say used to because there isn't any opposition to be had anymore, but some of the people that used to make the impression that there was an opposition to have against us be demonstrated wrong, and they would rather fight to the ends of the earth to never let that circumstance be recognised by others. But half the time, by bracing against their own ineptitude, ignorance, whatever it may be, they make it more obvious. It's more glaring. The lack of humility serves them worse than just admitting that they got it wrong. You know, most of the time, just getting something wrong, as long as it's conceded pretty quickly, most people will move past it, and most of the time just forget it even happened. All right, you got that wrong. Yeah, it's actually this. Oh, okay. And if somebody's been hurt as a consequence of your incorrect information, there might even be a requirement for apologies. But most of the time, even if there was a requirement for apology, just having the ability to concede and offer a certain degree of humility would leave you cognitively in a much better place. But they choose the other thing. I will brace against this forever, rather than admit that I was wrong. Right, but that sounds like a lot of effort. That sounds like you're going to be bracing against something that you're going to, suppress mentally? That whenever you think about it and someone's not around, it will drive you to distraction? Why would you put yourself through that? Just because you're wrong and you have to be infallible? Nobody's infallible.
Only God's infallible. And I
Yeah.
know that because we exist. If he was fallible, we'd cease to exist.
There's
My question
something
is-
about this topic, though, and it's like in people's minds, if you can make them wrong about one thing, right? Like, oh, he got a kilometer incorrect, you know, then you're wrong about everything. You know what I mean? It's like they use it for character assassination, you know?
But it's a courtroom standard that they feel applies unilaterally, and it doesn't. It's like, if you're trying to impeach somebody, then you're looking for parts of their story that are incongruent with the details being given in the moment. That is to say, a verbal testimony on a stand might be incongruent with a written testimony taken 6 months earlier. And an impeachment requires you demonstrate the inconsistency between the two so that a jury or judge can recognise that, given that both situations cannot simultaneously true, this person's credibility decreases. Now, in a courtroom where the standards are labelled like beyond a reasonable doubt, or, you know, there's a standard to adhere to in terms of how much of that is tolerable. Whereas in general societal terms, people getting stuff wrong is normally admitted to. It's not like, oh, well, because I've got this wrong, I can now be impeached. By who? There is no judge in front of you. Now, people will judge you, but they will judge you more harshly on a lack of humility and ability to admit that you're wrong, rather than getting something wrong. Doesn't mean that someone's suddenly going to go to the electric chair. The stakes aren't the same as when you're in a courtroom having committed a crime. The overarching thing that's being impeached from a witness that isn't necessarily on trial is the person who's on trial in their story that's being purveyed, and whether or not you should take their story based on witness testimony that's impeachable. These are very different standards. But people think suddenly we have this overarching courtroom standard to be applied. Like, it's a fair guideline if you want to, you know, say, well, based on somebody consistently being wrong, I won't trust them as being right. The fact that they constantly admit that they're wrong after being wrong, and then they go on to be wrong again, that builds up a pattern of somebody that you probably shouldn't trust.
It goes both ways, though. Because my brother threw it at me because he's the one that started telling me about flat Earth. And when he got into, you see, he stood in that whole conspiracy realm, that whole feast of nonsense. So he got tossed all around. I'm speaking specifically about the Bible right now. And he fell into the whole thing where he went back to the law of Moses. And what he said to me was, well, you followed me and you knew I was right about flat Earth. And now you're going to fight with me against this? So they use it both ways. I was like, yeah, because flat Earth, I mean, it's flat. What you're talking about is something totally contrary to Scripture itself. Anyway.
What are you going to do?
Well, you could be right about a million things and wrong about something. That don't mean anything. Or you could be wrong about a million things, but right about something. If you're right, you're right. If it's measured, it's measured. And it just happens to be measured flat. What are you going to do? Pick out the times that was wrong? To say, no, not flat? Well, you got a serious religion you're hanging on to then.
Well, when you try to say that, oh, I showed you this truth, right? So you must adhere to anything I state as being true. They're trying to make themselves the authority over what you understand and or believe. It's kind of like trying to be a guru, I guess.
I understand what you're saying, but not in my brother's case is different. I don't know. It's just weird. See, you never, when I say progress in the topic, it's not like a school where you graduate, but there is a progression when you first get involved in this topic to where you are now. Certain things happen along the way. And if I talk to you and you're saying the same things that you were saying in 2015, 2016, there's no progression. There's no like, you're sealed off. Any more new information that can come through because you're still stuck in the old rhetoric. And then to top it all off, you can be so stuck in the rhetoric that when you're breaking down measurements to them, yeah, I know. And then talk about how they see too far or the movement of the stars. I don't know, man.
I think it's extremely common, especially in this topic, for people to acknowledge what you say as a fact, but not take it in and actually comprehend it. You know what I mean? They're just waiting on their turn to say something.
Yes, so
Yeah, but I was expecting my brother of all people, because he works, does air conditioning, he does measurements, he does layouts, right? He has to lay out a whole duct system throughout a store. He knows what the freak measurements are. And it just like seems like it's going right over his head. He's not paying attention to it. I don't know. But like when a measurement was brought to me, I couldn't talk about freaking how fast they say he was spinning around the earth. I couldn't talk about gravity anymore. I couldn't talk about anything anymore. It's like, what are you doing? You demonstrated to me how it's measured. It's measured flat. What the hell am I talking about all of this other stuff for?
Well, the way the discussion used to go, right, is you would say the flat earther would say, well, we measure the Earth as a plane, and then the baller would say, oh, but we measure drop, and the drop can only exist if Earth is a sphere, right? But it's like they never define drop or what they mean by drop. They just say this word, and then they'll hold up a drawing, which they have level as a horizontal plane, and show you a geometric obstruction below level.
Yep.
And draw a line of sight from your eye, or what would be your eye, to that point, and say that's the horizon right there, you know?
I always hated that. There's no drop. There's no measured drop. What? Why would you be looking to measure any drop? I don't know. To me, that's like saying you see too far. You're demonstrating flight, right? How it's flying over a flat plane. And the reason why you know is because you don't measure any drop. Now, what sense does that make? You tell me.
I don't. Well, you don't measure it. You're only supposed to when you're talking about measurement, you don't talk about what you don't measure. That's what
Correct.
you talk about what you measure. You don't. Why would you bring up what you don't measure?
Agreed. Makes no sense to me. It's just like saying we see too far. In my opinion, same thing. We see too far.
Oh, hey Neil. Hey Neil, that floor that we measured earlier is not 6'8". So could you go cut that for me?
That's a good way of putting it. Well done. That's perfect.
Yeah, like you're talking about what you know when you're talking about what you measure. Why are you talking about what you didn't measure? That's asinine.
Yeah, where's your drop? You're supposedly flying around the globe. Where's your drop? Holy shit.
Even around, I mean, I hate to do this to the ballers because, we want to try to help them out as much as possible. Even the term around is describing a movement on a Cartesian plane.
That's a fact.
No matter how you describe it, if it's circling you in the vertical, the horizontal, however, you have to describe it on a Cartesian plane. So around, I did this. I don't know. None of it makes any sense to me anymore. I don't even know why people get so angry with us. It's not stuff that they don't know. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I think a big part of the appeal of the Feast of Nonsense, though, is like there's some kind of secret knowledge, right? Like there's this something you didn't know about that could really let you in on the DL. You'd be set apart and elevated because of your sacred knowledge or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, well, what's the fun in everybody already knows that level is flat. Depressing, kind of.
It is like the simplest thing against like the biggest lie. So I guess that's a big disjoint.
What'd you say? The simplest thing against what?
Against the biggest lie.
What would that biggest lie be?
We're on a spinning ball. Like they want me to think about it. So, I mean, yeah, you've already put me back on the ball. I don't know how to answer your question here.
Well, I agree it's a lie from one point because I think the deception is further take it back before man. But that's according to scripture in my opinion.
Yeah, if we're just dealing with earthbound authorities, right? I don't think it's a lie. I think they're just wrong. I think it went without saying for so long that what is fundamental was forgotten.
Yeah, but
And
then
people
I understand. Hold on, I understand what Adam's talking about. But now you have agencies like NASA continuing to promote this. So you could say, hey, it started out, they were just trying to figure out the movement of the stars. That's not today, though, is it? So there is a lie factor involved.
Well, now I ain't saying, see, that's separate, because people who recognize there was money to be made in the fantasy doesn't necessarily mean that those people are aware it's a fantasy themselves. They're just deluded. But the people that are actively saying that they're visiting the fantasy land are liars.
Yeah, but that, okay. In my opinion, the whole agency is a lie.
You think
I'm not just
everybody in
hold
NASA's
on.
lying?
Yeah, well, no. The entire agency is built on a lie.
I would say the
That's it.
entire agency is built on a falsehood.
All right, but they're still pushing that falsehood. A falsehood's a lie.
No, all lies are falsehoods. Not all falsehoods are lies.
That sounds like doublespeak to me.
No, because intent, you have to have the intent to deceive for a lie. You can be wrong about something and it not be a lie. Like if my daughter told me that she believed the rainbows were made of Skittles,
No.
I wouldn't
You
call
can't.
her a liar.
No. You can't do that. That's not what we're talking about.
It sounds like she just wanted to and has spent the last 10 years to an end, like one of those.
Man, I'm going to sound like a jerk. Could you repeat that?
Did somebody say something?
I said that about the Skittles thing, and then my speakers went kind of crazy.
Oh, because there was somebody else. I heard something in the background too. I don't know if somebody was trying to get in. What I'm saying is, that's your daughter's idea of something. When they constructed this heliocentric system that we're in, it may have started out as maybe somebody's idea of how the movement of the stars, right, or how they could freaking better predict when Easter would be. That's fine. But we're in 2026 now.
Right. You appealed to the, time's duration, but you've not explained how the understanding has progressed for them to,
Well, the understanding's not progressed to them. They're keeping the understanding and the progression down. Right? They left
Right.
geography and they
So-
went to science and they made science pseudoscience. So these things are not done accidentally.
Well, okay. As a Christian, I believe that is true as far as principalities and greater things of this world are concerned. But to us mortals, that's not necessarily true.
I don't know. Maybe there has to be a great awakening. I have no idea. But everybody's experienced the earth as being flat. Everybody. but yet we're taught in school that we're the third planet from the sun. There's a disconnection somewhere. And I think that's what Adam is talking about when he says the biggest lie.
Well, it's a theological problem, right? Because first they're allowed to put a statement of fact into an if statement. Then they put that if statement measurement, or they put the measurement into an if statement. They put the if statement into a calculation that's not applicable to give them their justification for denying what they just measured. And then they can appeal to ambiguity and what we don't know as a way of understanding the world around us. It's diluted is all it is. It's just diluted.
Or it's intentional. Land hogs. You have land. What do they tell you? The best thing to buy is property. When everything's going to hell, make sure you have property. Right? We're talking about the biggest land hogs in the world here. Because that's the only reason they'll put us on a freaking globe and teach it in school. Right?
The way they put it is they say it's the only thing they're not making any more of.
Yes.
I would see, I don't know, to say that they know that there is more land. I don't know how you would know what they know to make that as a statement.
Well, the globe has been debunked, right? Because we know we measure it flat. So there is a proof that Earth is flat because it's measured that way.
Yeah, that doesn't prove that it's more territory. It's just as much.
Yeah, but you know it's not a globe, is what I'm saying. Let me finish.
Yeah, but I'm just backing up John because I had to go at a guy over the curry over the weekend with Craig for this exact thing, because it's just as unreasonable to say that you know there isn't any more land as much as you know that there is. You don't know either way. You can't know what you don't know. Now, you can say in recent history we found more land and the maps were altered as a consequence of the new territories being discovered. Now, that is a statement of absolute fact that you can pull from our recent history that doesn't require you speculate about there being or not being more land. You don't need to.
Yeah, but we're trying to talk about, see, that's my whole thing. Why are they still where we're at right now in history? They're still teaching in schools that kids are living on a globe. Nathan, it's splashed all over the TV. The World Cup, right? They have the globe spinning around, all these cities on it. There's got to be a reason why it's still propped up the way it's propped up and reified constantly in everybody's mind. Got to be a reason why they're doing that.
Because it's the predominant religion of our society.
Yeah, I think that's something else that we should cover on a different show where we actually go through it, like qualify it in the way that people could understand with old examples of religion. So if I compare how people used to be controlled with Odin and Thor and, you know, old religions that people definitely recognise as being religious, but also could easily juxtapose with the current religion that they don't even know they're in. You know, it offers them both a level of detachment, but simultaneously something to compare and contrast with the current control system as a religion. But it is just that, right? It's just the common man's religion. The one world religion is heliocentrism. There's been other religions throughout time that have been used for the same purposes, and whether or not the elites know that their religion or the religion of the people isn't really real is irrelevant. It's just a religion.
But why? You got to
Why?
get into why are they propping up this religion? They started at a very early age, like freaking kindergarten.
When anybody asks why now, all I feel is, why male models? But
Oh,
why
you know
male
what I'm saying?
models?
That's different because you're teaching kids something that's not true. We know the earth is measured flat, and they're teaching them in school that they're living on a freaking spherical earth hurling through space. I hate saying it that way, but that's what they're teaching. That's what they teach our youth. All right? Even in homeschool, you choose a curriculum that you're going to go from, and every one of them has it in there.
Why male models?
Oh my God, Neil, you better attack him.
Oh, what, being a false comparison?
No, because he just trolled the shit out of you.
Yeah, he does that all the time because he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to deal with the issue of the big lie.
Yeah, but why male models?
Adam, I know what you're saying, Adam.
They're just scared of telling us why male models is all it is. Right to the topic. It's like, I just it reminded me of Brian. I was arguing with him about the Principia, and he's like, "Show me somewhere where it says Viz in it." And I I went and I got. He's like,
Yeah, the Russian, right?
well, he's like, "You're looking at a translation." I was like, "Yeah, but that's what you wanted. I'll give you what you." Good stuff.
What was that stemming from anyway? Gravity, right? Gravitas.
Well, Brian was trying to say that Newton never claimed gravity to be a force when he most certainly did. He wrote a whole book on it called the fucking Principia. Oh, pardon my French.
Yeah, because they take that one what was it, a letter corresponding with somebody where he goes on.
Yeah, and all he was saying in that, right, is that there needs to be an agent for his conjecture to hold any weight in the mind of anybody that has any kind of philosophical competency, I think is how he said it. I can't remember.
Faculties.
But yeah. For he was just saying, if you're going to believe this, you're going to have to believe in, the supernatural, basically. And it ain't to say that he didn't believe in the supernatural, like I think it was misinterpreted by flat earthers, like when Buzz said what he said, Buzz Aldrin.
He said we never went there.
Yeah.
No, I think he's drawing on the fact that there needs to be an external party or agent or whatever he calls it. That's what you're leaning into, right?
It
doesn't mean he doesn't necessarily suggest that there isn't one. It's just that that's what he's suggesting is required.
Yeah, that's the ether.
Right. Or, it could be an appeal to his religious point of view. And, and him asserting the existence of God through gravity, which we've heard plenty of people say in this topic.
Yeah, but he would have to back that up with the scriptures that he knew.
Unless his religion wasn't necessarily Christianity.
I thought they were all basically Christians back then, weren't they? I know that what do you call Copernicus and all of them were Bible believing Christians, I guess. I don't understand how they could say that when or claim that when they put us in the freaking third rock from the sun scenario. I don't get it.
Well, they got this term, they say Bible believing Christian, so that they can be, in their minds, Christian, adhere to faith, but not use it don't make sense to me. Like, you either believe or you don't.
Correct. Because in the Bible, you have to show me the layout of heliocentrism for you to say that it's in the Bible. When all I see in the Bible is that God created the heavens and the earth, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and put them all in a firmament. Now, where you come up with heliocentrism from there, that's a stretch.
Well, he uses a lot of that above kind of language when he's describing his place with respect to it. So,
yep.
Kind of tells you what it is right there,
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I said. Read Genesis. You can see right in Genesis where we live, what we're living on. Not what we're not living on, what we're living on.
I don't have a problem with people, bringing the Bible into the discussion. I just, I don't think it should be used as your basis of knowing.
Where do we get right? But hold on. But where do we get right from wrong from? Where do we get all of this from?
Walmart?
Where do we get a moral code from?
God.
Where do we get what's true and what's not true from?
Nah, see, the Bible does not hold a monopoly on what is true and what is not true.
The Bible.
You can know.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there are truths that are not in the Bible. You know what I mean? And there are falsehoods that are not mentioned in the Bible. Like, God, I'm dancing such a fine edge. I don't even that's why I don't like talking about it.
But what is truth?
That which conforms to the mind of God.
And what is knowledge?
Comprehension of experience.
It's got to be experienced in the natural world, correct?
By someone, not necessarily you. but yeah, by someone.
Right. But now, can you say that you would have all of these things without the Word of God?
No, I didn't say that. I said there are things that are not mentioned in the Bible that are true and false, separate from the Bible.
Okay, because he does say that people are without excuse because you can go outside and just look at nature and know that there's a creator, right?
Oh, I took that as you're without excuse because for you to contemplate anything about existence itself requires an objective truth and therefore an objective being to hold the this existence together.
Well, that's what I'm questioning myself when I'm thinking that do you have to have a Bible? Can someone never even have seen a Bible before, right? Have a moral code built in their heart?
Neil, I have never read the Bible and I am Christian.
Yeah, but you've heard enough of it, John. You can't use that. You've heard enough Bible. You heard enough scriptures. I'm talking about, let's say, someone in freaking an African tribe that's never been discovered before. Will they have a moral code of right and wrong?
Well, that's what I was saying. The objective, of what is and what isn't. You require the higher being, the pository of knowledge, to draw from, because understanding isn't ours. Revelation is His, and something He gives us. So you can't really form a society without that as your basis. Basically, that's why uh, all religions have gods, greater beings. They're the that from which we draw understanding. I do a really bad job at explaining my views on this. So I'm not, I can tell somebody where they're wrong. I just can't explain to them why he is right. You know, it sucks.
Well, look at people like Ken Hovine. He supposedly knows the Word of God inside out, or Danny Faulkner for that instance. But they'll be willing to manipulate the scriptures to say what they wanted to say just to hold on to the heliocentric indoctrination. That's powerful. But the big question is this. Will the USA beat Belgium today?
What the hell are you talking about? I didn't even know we was at war.
The World Cup. USA is playing Belgium today.
Yeah.
The U.S. is playing Belgium. Is it for the World Cup?
No, it's to get into the next round. So England took care of Mexico last night. Norway took care. Who did Norway play again? I forgot who Norway played, but they won. So now it's a showdown of Norway against freaking England. I think Saturday. That's going to be a big one. Because you got this Viking there, like 6'8", named Erling Haaland, and he just freaking finds the net wherever he is. He's got a head like concrete.
How did we end up on soccer, Neil?
Yeah.
I feel lost in the woods now, buddy.
This is the way my mind is thinking. This whole thing is taking place on a sphere.
You know, a field is a Cartesian area, right?
That's locally.
Absolutely.
The field that they're playing, the pitch where they're playing the game is local. So, of course, that's going to be flat.
If you take a segment of a horizontal, right, does that segment of a horizontal that is local to your area, does it stop being horizontal at the segmented points?
What do you mean when you pass it?
Well, like say you draw a line, right? And this line is imaginary and it goes on ad infinitum in both directions, right? And it is horizontal. And you go out 50 feet from each, from the center point and draw 2 dots on that line and say that's local. Does that mean after those 2 dots, your line begins to bend?
That depends. Are you measuring that line after the fact or not? If you're not measuring it, then you can move from the local measurements to the non-Euclidean, sphere-based, non-local, non-measured suggestions beyond what you're actually measuring. If you're going to measure that point beyond the limitations you just laid down, then you will just measure it Euclidean again.
Flat.
Now, I feel like you're talking about a curve function collapse. That was a Arwen's thing.
What curve function? When you reach that point and you measure again, it will be from a horizontal plane.
No,
So
that's
it
not
just
what I
will
would mean. But
continue.
what we would take from it to mean now is that if you're going to extrapolate a curved function, a squared function, from a linear distance, that's a drop vertical with respect to a axiomatically horizontal distance. Then if you're going to assert that non-locally you can measure non-Euclidean, then you're collapsing the axiomatic requirements of perpendicularity used to ascribe drop, that's vertical, over distance, that's horizontal, when you assert non-Euclidean, non-local geometry. That causes the function of the squaring to create the mile, mathematically only, to collapse. That no longer works in a geodesic, right? A geodesic's the shortest distance on a curved line. Well, you can't have a drop with respect to a distance if you've got an already in place non-Euclidean geodesic on a curved surface that's created with Euclidean geometry to begin with. The whole thing collapses. So the collapse would be the incongruence with the flat measurements.
Absolutely. And that is why we have been trolling Flat Earth this whole time. We know how it curves. We've just been hiding it, keeping it secret.
What drop? I heard drop in there too. There's no drop. There's no curve function collapse. There's no nothing. All we have is horizontal distances.
Yeah, it can describe a drop with respect to them. That's a hill.
Well, now you're talking about measuring the terrain.
Yeah, so curve. How is Earth curve any different to a hill? Well, it's kept in a science category and called Earth curve, whereas a measured Earth curve, I can't help but utilise the technology wrong. A curve that is a hill can be measured and is of Earth. So a curve with respect to Earth is something measurable, but Earth curve, in quotes, isn't measurable because we always measure flat locally. So you have an inference in a different geometry, non-Euclidean. And then you describe things in terms of their geodesic, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that curve function collapse, as we're labeling it, has to deal with the non-inertial frame creating what we would say is the cause of observing a localized plane. It's actually the movement of Earth in a certain vector that gives the appearance of flatness. Damn, man, we should be like giving speeches on this shit at NASA, man. All over it.
What, be tools of Satan instead of God?
Are you Owen Benjamin?
What can I say, buddy? Everybody likes their own brand, you know what I mean? I feel like I got extremely country right there, and I apologize. Did not mean to let that much Southern out at once. How funny would it be, though, right, if there was a heliocentrist who just listened to us, took that in, what we just said, and created a whole new smear. No, you're laughing. I'm just saying that's kind of how this crap works in this topic, apparently. But yeah, they created a whole new smear of heliocentric rhetoric just from the conversation we just had.
I do think that's how it's been working for about 10 years. I mean, I don't mean us specifically, but I mean the purpose of having the argument exist. When you could, by rights, just censor it out of all existence. I mean, there's nothing to stop them actually, like, literally just censoring you. Because people soon shut up when they go, oh, right, I can't talk about COVID jabs. And if I do, they'll just turn my channel off. And then you talk about COVID jabs, they turn your channel off. You've not got a channel anymore. It's fairly cut and dry when they do actually want to censor people out of all existence. But with Flat Earth, they don't. They want to control the opposition. So they keep the narratives alive. And an extraction they can make from those narratives is to smear heliocentric bullshit bullshit on top of the cracks as they appear. So it is a cleansing process, which is what gets me annoyed with the current raft of flat earthers. Now I know this. Now, it would be hypocritical to not say, well, I was a part of that too, because I was. But by the same token, recognising it, you go, okay, I see where there's a symbiosis. I could flip it the other way. If it wasn't for McToon bracing against us, there wouldn't be a back and forth discussion that exposed cracks in heliocentric rhetoric for them to be overcome and then have that paste that you just described being slathered over it. That wouldn't happen. So if you look at that from the negative perspective, that you need to put, smears of bullshit over heliocentric cracks, then you could say that by demonic provenance, we have this discussion with us bracing against people who are in the affirmative for the heliocentric position. So you could say that we are by demonic provenance helping to support that ends by bracing against it and saying Earth's not spherical and begging the question of flat Earth measurements without highlighting them. We're actually helping the opposition. But then you go, okay, but I can easily invert that completely 180 degrees and say it is by God's providence that we have, I don't know, conspiracy cats or Dave, not a professor, whoever, to brace against, to expose the ludicrous nature of their rhetoric. Without them, without the dweebs who are, confident enough in their rhetoric to stand possibly under a fake name, but you know what I mean, to the degree that a dweeb's going to stand by their rhetoric in front of an audience. Because that is a scary prospect. Like, a lot of people say having an audience stare at you is more terrifying than death for some people. So therefore, you can't really help but commend the dweebs that stand in opposition to us, because it gives us the opportunity to expose the ludicrous nature of the cracks that are formed, have been formed, past tense, and are being smeared over currently, present tense. So that in future tense, people recognise the prerequisites that are required for their belief that they already hold. If there isn't a gateway, we just end up having to do what Mark Sargent justified to me about 10 years ago with the AE map and say, well, we need a tool to allow people to cognitively step from one paradigm to the other. Not necessarily. If people are holding that paradigm in fierce opposition, vehement or otherwise, towards us, that's to say they're hostile, you need somebody on their own side, like a buffer, to brace against so that they don't feel personally slighted when it's challenged. And ultimately, if they're a bit evil, give them someone to blame because they're too cowardly to accept blame themselves for their own ignorance. That's the lack of humility that we discussed earlier. So they need someone to blame. It's your fault. And then they can go after some other dweeb that happened to have had the brave pills to stand in front of an audience and declare something that was incorrect, and then lack the humility to accept responsibility, which causes another group of dweebs to want to brace against them to blame them when they feel stupid but don't want it to be, projected out to an audience that they don't want to seem stupid to because they want to be in the consensus. And again, you stand back from all of it and go, if you just had introspection and a lack of concern for the external forces of other people who probably don't give a shit about you anyway, you'd be a lot more or a lot less concerned with this. You'd realise the futility of it all. It's going to be flat anyway. The argument's inconsequential. How you look or feel for having got it wrong is inconsequential also. My influence over next man, if they are currently getting it wrong, is inconsequential to the measurements also. And so you go on. But if the overall overarching desire of our Lord God Almighty is to expose this to the masses, then there will be a necessity to have a scapegoat for the other side, that the people who are bracing in opposition to us, or perceived to be, need to be in place to do. So you could say it's by God's divine intervention that there are these people who have taken the brave pills on the dweeby side that they might not have had the courage to do, to stand in opposition to us for a general public, or the audience, if you want to call them that, to see how incongruent with the mistruth they were taught in school actually is, without them having to actually stand on stage with a spotlight pointed on them to be told how wrong they are by someone like me, who's very aggressive. So, I don't know, I sometimes look at it all and go, our opponents are a necessity that, by when people use words like provenance, are there in place in the game and as blessed by our Lord as any other man. We're all sinners. So, in that case, they're assisting the awakening of the deceit that might be truly satanic. I have no idea how to scale it up in these in these religious terms, but to a man who believes that, there is a certain providence to both us and our perceived opponents, right? Twist your melon a little bit. So in conclusion, I think we should all send a little thank you to McToon.
We're double speaking. I'm about damn sure of that. I can't put my finger on it just this moment.
Dear Toon, thank you so much. I feel God has blessed you deeply. Love and cuddles from Nathan. No homo. XXX.
Don't get him excited.
I have a pillow waiting for you.
Hey, Neil, you got any late night phone calls from McToon?
No. He must have heard the news that I have it all documented and basically reported to some sort of cyber type thing in Minnesota. Who knows? They may have knocked on his door already. I don't know. Because everybody was pushing me to get it on record. And it's hard for a guy of my background to go to the cops over something as stupid as this.
It was kind of creepy, him calling you really late at night with all those gay thoughts, you know?
Oh, the last one he did was worse because he brought my family in it. Right? How when my wife approached us, said, better yet, your kids, these all get together. He said something stupid like that. Like that. I said, right there, I was like, this man's a sick man. He's a sick individual. And it's because, when Nathan talks about fisting, he gets excited. That's all there is to it. And when you get excited, you get into this freaking euphoric mode where you don't know what you're saying anymore. And that's what happens when Nathan uses these analogies. He gets excited like a little school bitch. And
Hi, Neil. Thing is, like,
who's that?
sorry,
One back?
I've not been able to talk much. Yeah, sorry, mate. I've just been listening. I've not been able to talk much today. Yeah, he knows where you are every day of the week. When he was in worldwide debates on the first 8-hour session on the keyboard. If he wants to talk to you, he can just come and talk to you on the show.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, well.
Same thing with Nathan. He has a ticker of how long Nathan won't come and debate him, but he'll sit in the background and play freaking sound bites from soundboards of Nathan's voice saying, do not
Did he
swear on
reset
my
that?
show.
Did he reset the clock where Nathan was on worldwide debates with him and he didn't say a word? So
I did message him.
Clock, right?
Well, I did message him and tell him to reset it because I said, we all seen you in there unwilling to talk. You've been wanting a debate. It was in worldwide debating, not that there's a debate, and you didn't get involved. So, full of shit.
No, but me as a Christian, I should have stopped him. I should not have sat there and listened to that. She sat there and listened to that and got excited.
I tell you what, I'm going to start a clock for when I'm trying to think of a pretty actress.
Oh, I now can sense what's coming. I'm not going to ruin it though.
Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, I'm going to make a clock. It says, till Scarlett Johansson comes and sleeps with me, and if she don't, she's obviously a coward.
Yeah, and then you cut to the scene like in Weird Science where they've created the Barbie doll into a real woman, and she's having a shower with them, and they've got their jeans on.
That movie's such a classic. Every time it comes on, I gotta watch it.
It's got the guy from Mad Max in it. Do you remember when she wants to make him look brave?
Yeah.
But he's in the exact costume. It's the same character, same actor, same costume.
Yeah.
from Mad Max.
That's correct.
Yeah, I saw him do a reunion a couple of years ago, and they had all three characters there. And the two guys were just average. They just averaged in terms of how they looked compared to their age, whereas she had not aged well. And I remember lusting after her so much during my teenage years. Lisa, the character.
Kelly LeBrock?
Yeah, Kelly LeBrock.
Yeah, she was a stunner back in the day. Well, you don't age good when you got Steven Seagal beating the shit out of you.
Is that what she had to contend with?
From what I hear, who knows?
But McToonson, he's got a time.
Say again.
Just saying. Go on, John.
I talked enough, brother. You go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all right, mate. I was just saying, McToonson, he's got a countdown timer. That was time measured, and then he had the gall to send me a time lapse of his sundial in apparently Antarctica.
So he sent you a flat Earth measurement to what? For what purpose?
To say he lives on a globe. He sent me the time lapse video of a sundial.
Yeah, can't happen on a flat Earth. Don't you get it? 24-hour sun
It's funny.
only works on a globe, and they proved it by going there.
Do you have to have a sundial level?
Yep.
I asked the other day, I didn't get an answer in the worldwide debate server. At what point do the globe believers accept how Earth is measured flat for their heliocentric religion to exist? I think I asked, how many flat Earth measurements will it take for you guys to even recognise how flat Earth is measured for your belief to exist? At the moment, all we're trying to get them to do currently, if you want to look at it from the point of view that we do still appeal to ball believers, as much as it's sad, on our own part, right? It goes against every fibre of my being currently, actually, because it's like, this is silly. This seems like mental masturbation. It seems like a waste of time. But nevertheless, we still appeal to ball believers. But at what point do they accept their own foundational requirements? Obviously, they're flat Earth measurements. But how many do we need to put in front of them before they go, okay, yeah, I accept that Earth's got to be measured flat for this stuff that I believe in? How many before they will start to accept that? And I asked it not as a rhetorical question to make a ha-ha, there's so many flat Earth proofs that are needed for you to believe you're on a ball kind of Nelson moment. It was more of a, I sincerely want to know how many foundational flat Earth prerequisites are required before ball believers who interactively deal with this recognise that Earth's being measured flat. How many will it take?
I don't know,
Well,
but if you'll allow me to read something, right, and don't interrupt, perhaps you'll finally realize, Nathan, and change your tune. The 24-hour sun, midnight sun, proves the Earth is a globe because continuous sunlight in polar regions requires a curved, rotating, and tilted sphere. On a flat Earth, a localized spotlight sun would either constantly illuminate the entire plane or leave the outer edges in perpetual darkness, making it impossible to experience a 24-hour sun in Antarctica during December and simultaneously in the Arctic during June. The globe model accounts for this through the Earth's 23.5-degree axial tilt. As the Earth orbits the sun, this tilt angles one hemisphere toward the sun, keeping regions beyond the polar circles in continuous daylight as the planet spins. Game,
Okay.
set, match.
Let's just break that down. So you've got a flat Earth being held up in juxtaposition and false dichotomy by asserting that something that isn't being compared and contrasted to the assertion of the globe model means that it's false. So let's deal with that first. They're saying if it was flat, we'd have this effect of the sun. Okay, that's an unsubstantiated negative claim. So it wouldn't do this if it was flat. Okay, well, we can disregard that because you're not holding up an effective, fair comparison to say that because Earth is ball-shaped, we don't have that effect, or we do have that effect by contrast. So that can be completely disregarded as a non sequitur red herring held up in false dichotomy. The assertions of what a flat plane wouldn't do. So let's just disregard them now. I've dealt with them. Now we're left with the assertion that this is explained with a globe. Okay? Well, the globe is created from a centre point with a radial value measured off a flat Earth with the polar axis that he's bending at a degree from a flat Earth with respect also to a plane, with you inside it in orbital motion. So, in order to have this system asserted to explain this, we need to measure a radial value off a flat Earth, set it into Keplerian orbital motion. No, from Copernicus' orbital motion, and then put it in elliptical orbital motion with a tilt, and then scale it with Huygens values of Earth radius that we started with off a flat plane. So with all of those things in tow, we can describe the system of time around us at a centre point on the segmented longitude system with respect to the vertically measured also off a flat plane polar system that we're going to tilt with respect to a plane at an angle. So we can describe the observation, which is now set in juxtaposition to this model by assertion that it explains the observation, describing a sun with an azimuthal directionality noted and an angle off a flat plane noted for its positional data throughout the day. So we're comparing a model made with flat Earth prerequisites with you inside a globe describing azimuth and altitude for a Polaris-based system that's put in tilt with respect to a plane around a sun that's only set at a single time vernal equinox, with the time average also derived flat from the sun, in comparison to an observation of the sun moving around to centre point for a 24-hour period, both using concepts, that's time itself, derived from a flat plane, and flat measurements in azimuthal directionality in real time, if they're suggested to actually be in Antarctica, and angular position with respect to the horizon, again over a 24-hour period. That's both azimuth and altitude simultaneously. So lots of flat Earth measurements being made in Antarctica means this model made with lots of flat Earth prerequisites can explain it. Okay? I'll accept all of the above. If you suggest that putting the world in a suggested orbital elliptical motion scaled by Huygens means that we are in a globe on an equatorial plane with the Polaris-based system conceptually tilting with respect to a plane at a degree measured from a plane around the sun conceptually, would explain the sun simply moving around you to give you the time concept that you've already derived in the first place when you use it as an explanation with a, quote, 24 hours of sun? What's that got to do anything? Oh, is it because 24 hours is the suggested average that we should have in a day and night when cycled over a 24-hour period, when you average a 365.25 day year? Well, those concepts are derived specifically from the sun. So this is an absolute clusterfuck that requires about 6, I counted, flat Earth prerequisites in the model alone, followed by another 3 in the actual observation, if we even believe it was taken. So it's a a whole tissue of flat Earth measurements, one after the next. Now, at no point in those derived values were we ever on the Polaris-centred axis that's tilted with respect to a plane surface of the protractor we measured the degrees with. At no point does it ever assert that in the suggestions that you read out, or in the heliocentric model itself that's derived from flat planar measurements of the surface to give us a radial value and equatorial and extended celestial plane. Now, I will say at this point that I thought it was smart on my part, where out of necessity to get my opponent to actually listen to the words coming out my own fucking mouth, I suggested that I stand shoulder to shoulder with a bull believer to steel man the position of heliocentrism like I've just done. But in order to do so, I would have to accept that I am on the plane described in heliocentrism, with a reification that stands semi-shoulder to shoulder with somebody who misconstrues the idea of being on a protractor, you call a globe Earth, rather than inside the celestial sphere. Now, I pointed this out literally on today's show, only for later on in the show, John to point out I'd already done that with Kent Hovind. Now, I'm saying this for a reason. I'm going somewhere with all this. That's why I'm giving a very long preamble. There's nothing new under the sun. Even in something so unique and niche as Flat Earth, with a very limited audience and a very limited engagement, we still get to the point where I do something I see as being, by necessity, like I'm sitting there thinking how I can weave this in. It's like, how can I get this guy to actually listen to the words coming out of my mouth? I know, I'll tell him that I fully agree with him, so I can stand alongside him while explaining the Flat Earth prerequisites in his own belief of heliocentrism and the motion he's appealing to, like I've just done. Now, that still wasn't tolerated. I wasn't still facilitating the ability to steelman my opponent's position just with the prerequisite flat Earth measurements being highlighted as I did so. And when I point out that that was my attempt to get my opponent to at least listen to the words coming out of my mouth that describe his own position, but with the flat Earth prerequisites, John turns around and says, I've already done that with Kent Hovind. I suggested I would accept the celestial sphere. Well, how are we describing a tilt for a sphere Earth on an axis? What, the north-south axis? The polar axis? Measured with Polaris at an equator that's flat? We're going to tilt that at what, a degree with respect to a plane? And that explains us being in, at best, a ball, if we take this very out-of-the-box way of thinking after measuring Earth flat a few times. Doesn't ever put us on a ball, by the way, just to get to the conclusion of this. John's concession to Kent Hovind would have required John be in a ball, at its centre, a glorified protractor wrapped around his position, at a tilt on the celestial plane. That's how it does function if you're going to ever use it for anything practical. Now, the fact that that system can further be expanded into elliptical orbit by Kepler and scaled by Huygens when it's inscalable because it's the celestial sphere with infinite distance is neither here nor there. The origins and foundations are the same for both systems. But one requires you believe whilst in a ball you're tilted with respect to a flat plane that you must have initially. The other just accepts that when you're actually putting these lights into practical application, for navigation for the sake of argument, they're not at a set distance that's been scaled by Huygens. It is inscalable. Regardless, both require a flat plane, so who gives a shit? But there's nothing there's nothing new under the sun. What I was doing wasn't extraordinary. It had already been done by John. I'll just get to my overarching point. Why would I go to the effort of explaining all this when we'd already covered it? Well, when you consider that there's a direct use of John's argument that had already been used while I thought it was original, that means that at some point in history, there's a good chance that the exact same thing has happened. Someone else, let's say in the 70s, when this last resurgence of Flat Earth came about, there was probably people amongst the crowd that were talking about how Earth is just measured flat. But it wasn't them that made the headlines or had their book promoted throughout history as a useful tool of creating a false dichotomy narrative about Earth not being a ball. We get parallax. But I would bet my bollocks there were people who were doing as we did in every resurgence of Flat Earth ever, saying it's just measured flat. That's how it's done. But them never reaching the forefront of a controlled opposition Flat Earther to put in front of the masses. We get the ones that say, if I look down this canal The distance, no mention of it being flat, is beyond the limitations the ball suggests. I'm going to take this to court. I'm being called a liar. It is beyond the geometric limitations of a ball Earth radius 3959. That becomes the controlled narrative of a opponent who's gone down the path that is most useful for the future endeavours of anybody who comes to the subject 100 years later. So then you fast forward, you get to, wherever, the 1970s was my last example, wherever the times aren't relevant in terms of how they match up. But there'll be people who just recognise the world for what it is and how it's measured. They just never had popularity. But then you look at our current predicament and go, hang on a second, we suffer a high degree of censorship, but the wankers that offer support for the globe seem to get popular. You're like, isn't that interesting? Well, no, it's expected. If you're going to control the opposition, you need to have the opposition you want to be prevalent of all the voices that could be heard, be the ones that closest resemble how you'd want to brace against the argument, not the ones that end it. Get rid of them as best as you can.
That's an appeal to silence. Sorry.
I don't think it is. I think if I was trying to control a narrative, I'd want the people who were bracing against my narrative in the way I wanted it braced against be the ones that got promoted. It just makes obvious. It just makes sense to me. I mean, you could say it's speculation, which I absolutely admit it is. But my suggestion is that back throughout the time, this is where you're saying it's an appeal to silence, there must have been people who understood Earth is measured flat simply because we do. And I just don't think there's anything new.
I can't agree with that. I can't. I don't think there is. I don't think anybody's come to this conclusion and drilling it home like we are now.
We're just unpacking how Earth was and is always measured flat anyway. And in order to brace against that, you need to set up a false narrative of a science argument about Earth being or not being a ball. Well, that has been built up. That might have even been built up organically over time. But it does literally keep it separate from geography, which is just the fact that we measure Earth flat. And there's still people out there just saying that. Now,
No, but I mean, like your book will be saying this. We're saying it, right? I mean, I've not read every flat Earth book. I've flicked through some, and even the most recent ones out from, apparent, flat Earth experts are not really drilling on the measurements. And how it's just always been measured flat, and it's got nothing to. We can't alter that fact. I don't think anybody's ever got to this point before.
Well, maybe we'll find out how unique it is in terms of information once it's actually starting to make it into the, the hands of people. Yeah, I think I'm going to round out. Anybody got any last words?
I would just say your premise, your logic would be sound if your premise was. Sorry.
Fair enough. Right, with that, I will say, if you do have the means to support me via either the PayPal or Coffee links below, then please do so. It is by the generosity of people who support me financially via those links that I can actually have a channel. It is definitely not the case that I make my money through ad revenue from YouTube. So there has been a few people over the last couple of months that have supported me that hadn't previously. So I am very, very grateful that there is some new support coming via those means. So please do support me via the Coffee link or the PayPal link. A massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
Millimeter it be accurately measured. It's measured flat, direction up and down. Flat level we at, flight over ground. Descending from that breeze, heading in degrees. Horizontal, flat, EST. Now you know it's flat below ground. Measured flat.